Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Your co-host Russ here and Mike over there. Hey,
Mike, holy cow, it's episode 55?
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
We're cranking them out.
Yeah, we are.
Well, we're going to
Every
try.
week.
Yeah, we're going to try not to miss any this year. So
yeah, no, we're going to hopefully be here all year. We'll bring in the new year with you. We'll have 52 more episodes under our belt. Maybe 53, depending on when we started this year. I don't know, because there might be a half week in there somewhere.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some extra ones in, too, if something exciting happens.
And it's we're doing this on the last day of winter. So when this comes out, it'll be the first day of spring.
First day of spring.
Yeah.
And if there's any new listeners
Well, it'll be the first day of spring in Japan when it comes out, not in the U.S. It'll still be the last day of winter there.
That's right. We bring you usually six, sometimes more, new releases in classical and jazz music every week. And also...
And you should be listening to us because we're awesome.
Yeah.
And we're the only people doing this. Come on, man. We are getting more listeners, though, which is very cool.
We're getting more listeners, so...
Yeah.
Just to let you know, too, we talk about music because we can't play it here because of copyright reasons, but we do have all of the links for music available, including a week early.
Well, we could risk it, but we don't want to deal with being taken down possibly and stuff. And there's also, you'd have to splice it all in. That'd be a big pain.
That would be harder.
I think if we're going to this is a two-man operation. Yeah. That's really all it is. So we need to hire people in order to do some of that stuff. We need a Jamie like Joe Rogan's got, somebody who's going to do all that stuff for us. But we'd have to pay him. And in order to pay him, we'd have to be being paid. And that's not happening yet.
Well, let's not get discouraged quite yet.
No, we got another 5 or 6 years of just doing it for free in front of us. That's cool.
So
I think I'd be doing this anyway because I have nothing else to do. You know,
it helps you organize your music listening. Yeah, and for our listeners, for everything we're going to talk about tonight, you'll find links in the description to Spotify and Apple Music. Also at the top of the description to the episode, you'll find a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, our preferred streaming service. You can also follow the podcast there with the playlist every week. Just look for us, Adult Music Podcast, and we should pop up in the search category. Now, if you don't see the full description or the list on whatever app you're listening to, you can come over and check us out on our host site, Podbean, where everything's easy to follow. And if you enjoy the podcast, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you listen to us on. If you give us a ranking or write a review, that helps us get listed in the category recommendations. That helps us increase our audience. And you can also find us on Facebook. We've got a page there, too. You can leave a message or comment there. If you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions by email, we'd like to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, that's all one word, at gmail.com. We'll be sure to reply to you. And if you'd like to listen to the music early, the previously mentioned playlist on Deezer, I always get up right after I put the podcast up, so you can find out what we're going to talk about the following week, 6 days early.
Yeah, I really only do this podcast to justify my CD collection. Like, if I didn't do it, I'd just feel guilty. But now I feel like I'm a professional, so, I can, I could just buy more of them.
Just keep buying them.
Just keep buying them. I need it for the show.
It's true. Well, when we do make money, you can start writing them all off as a business expense.
That would be awesome.
Be nice.
Get some new stereo equipment, too. Speaking of which, I've got some new stereo equipment, and I'm never going outside again because I'm really enjoying the sound quality I'm getting now. I upgraded a bit.
Well, the coronavirus is still out there, and then pretty soon it's going to be that koso, the sand from the Gobi Desert that comes here in Japan that can play with your sinuses. Then it'll be the rainy season, and then it'll be too hot, so you might as well just stay inside.
Yeah, well, during the rainy season, I think it'll be nice because one of the things about listening in Japan is in the summer you have to have the air conditioning on, and in the winter you have your heater on. So there's all this kind of background there's a low hum going on in the room while you're listening. So spring and autumn are the best times because you don't have to have any of that stuff on, and you just hear silence. It's really good.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, the things you have to think about when you listen to non-loud music, you know.
Or at least music with dynamic range, yeah.
With dynamic range, because it goes down into the softer. And boy, we had one really quiet one today, didn't we?
Yeah, for sure.
But we'll get to that very soon.
All right, what do we got?
Speaking of CDs, we just received our first free CDs. I want to encourage this, by the way, from people out there. Send us free CDs, especially me, because I collect them.
Well, I wouldn't say that. We got some from Bruno last year.
Oh, Bruno sent us some too. Bruno Dambra. Yeah, I forgot.
Bruno.
No. He sent us one free one.
Oh, yeah. Mine was free.
Yeah, yours was free. I bought mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he heard the podcast and then he sent the second one free. So,
right.
Which was very nice of him. Thank you, Bruno.
That's right. Well, anyway.
We're waiting for your new album.
So these CDs we got today, as you can tell from the episode title, are the latest release from Wranitzky.
Wranitzky. Okay, now we have to make an announcement here. We're going to have a new segment on the show, and it's going to be called Wranitzky Releases.
Yeah.
Both words spelled with a W-R.
Of course.
Of course.
So anytime a new release comes out of Wranitzky's music, we're going to get it on as soon as we can. Now, for listeners who don't know the backstory on this, last year, the first volume of Wranitzky orchestra works was released, and I noticed it right away. And of course, I hadn't heard of Wranitzky before because almost no one had, and Mike hadn't either. So I said, let's talk about this. And so we talked about it. And then the evil genius mastermind behind getting all of this music out over in Sweden, Daniel Bernhardsson, contacted us because he was looking to see if anyone was talking about this music that he's spent many, many years finding in archives around Europe and digitizing it and making it available to musicians to play and now record. And so we talked about that first release, and there's 3 in that series of orchestra releases. And you can also check our interview number 3 with Daniel and the conductor, who's going to be featured on this CD that we have here. Marek
He's been on every one of these recordings so far. Marek Štilec, right?
Marek Štilec, I think is how
Štilec.
That's right. And so we've got a new one. And, well, Daniel tried to get the CDs to us, and they got here just in time. Luckily, we've already listened to it on...
we heard them on Deezer.
Deezer, on streaming.
And he sent us the booklet notes, too, which are pretty extensive, I have to say.
Yes.
He's very thorough.
And
this is one of those things where you don't know who Wranitzky is, and then you read his booklet notes, and then you really know more than really anybody else except him, I guess.
And fortunately, also Daniel makes these orchestral scores available. If you go to the Wranitzky Project website, I'll put a link in it with the album information. And I had fun on this one following along with the score because it's not a full orchestral score, which is really hard to manage on a screen. But this one is fairly easy with just a few string parts, oboe, flute, and a continuo. And it was interesting to use. And so this is what we're talking about here. It's Wranitzky Works for Oboe, and this is on the Arco Diva label.
Yeah. All right, and the oboe soloist is Vilém Veverka. I hope I'm saying that right. I have no experience speaking, talking about Czech or Eastern European names. And he's the oboe soloist, and we have the Wranitzky Kapelle. Well, he even has an orchestra ensemble named after him now. I'm guessing they put this together for this project.
Right.
And Marek Štilec is the conductor on the Arco Diva label. Now, the other 3 we did were all on the Naxos label, and I think there are going to be more releases on that label as well. By the way, part of the reason we decided to do the Wranitzky Releases section of this program is because there are suddenly a lot of them coming out.
Right.
And we rather flatter ourselves to think that we may have had something to do with that. Maybe the record execs heard us talking about him. I know that Daniel's out there proselytizing for everybody. And so we decided to just go with it. Not only that, but we do genuinely like his music. It's really interesting. And it's a great new discovery for us. And we'd like to be part of the team that puts Wranitzky's music back into the world.
Well, it's an interesting feeling with music like this. Every once in a while, I know in the jazz world, just a couple of years ago, there was like the Lost Coltrane recording.
Yeah.
And so everyone wanted to hear, what was on that record, and, what gaps does it fill, and what new ideas could have come out of that, because, it's going to be new to our ears, even though it's historical. And that's what I think makes, in the similar idea, on a grander time scale, going back to, classical music era, where most people think that, we've heard all of that music. And no, you haven't, especially from a major composer like Wranitzky.
You've only heard a tiny percentage of it.
Yeah.
There was loads of it around,
Yeah, history doesn't, history consolidates and casts out some things just by chance or bad fortune. But now we're fortunate enough to hear this other great composer, and so far it's been really interesting.
Yeah, we should also mention this is Paul Wranitzky. He had a brother, Anton, who's, I guess we're going to eventually hear his music too, but right now it's all Paul Wranitzky.
There have been a few recordings over the years, but not many. But now because of Daniel's work and Marek's passion for getting this music recorded, we're going to hear a lot more of it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with these works for oboe. Let me just kind of talk about a little more introductory material for this particular album. It was recorded September to October 2021, so that's after the interview. So this is one that they already knew about us when they were making this one. I think this is the first one we've heard that was recorded after we interviewed Daniel and Marek. And as I said, the booklet notes are thorough, informative, and well presented, very clear. If you don't know much about music, that's not going to be a problem. They're pretty easy to understand. So Daniel did a good job there. Okay, Paul Wranitzky and his younger brother Anton, we learn, both received their first formal music instruction at the local Premonstratensian monastery. I hope I said that right. This is why I don't work in radio, because you have to be able to say these things. I don't know. Some people can do that. And that's important because that's where this recording was made, at that monastery.
Wow.
And I think it's what we see on the album cover, too. I think it's a picture of that monastery.
Because I looked up the location on Google Maps, because I was in Czech Republic, 2019, and I had gone a little bit down and close to Austrian border, so I wanted to see if I had been anywhere in that area. Unfortunately, I wasn't, but if I go back, it looks really nice.
So you've been to Prague?
Yes.
That was a big thing in the 80s, because I think it was in Noah Baumbach's movie Kicking and Screaming. His girlfriend is talking. This one guy's character's girlfriend is talking to him about the Unbearable Lightness of Being, the Milan Kundera book that was really popular then when I was in college. And he hadn't read the book, but he said he knew what it was about. And his girlfriend asks him, have you ever been to Prague? And he says, "Oh, I've been to Prague," but he had never actually physically been there. But he had he meant it like as he kind of got the whole vibe of from the book. So I was kind of joking on that. It was a little too much, I think. You had to have seen that movie, Kicking and Screaming, Noah Baumbach. It's a good movie. Anyway, about college at the time, I kind of like those. Okay, anyway. So in 1783, that's the time our pal Mozart is really starting to make his way in Vienna and compose all of his most famous and mature works. Okay. At that time, Paul Wranitzky became music director to Count Johann Baptist Esterhazy of Galantha, who was a distant relative to Haydn's employer. He's another Esterhazy. He was the Count was a talented amateur oboist and a Freemason as well, which was common among the nobility at the time. Wranitzky also was a Freemason. He joined the Viennese Masonic Lodge Zur gekrönten Hoffnung at the Count's urging. He also helped Haydn to get into a Masonic Lodge. They wouldn't take him. Who knows why? I mean, Haydn was he was older than, I think, Wranitzky, and certainly older than Mozart, but I don't have Wranitzky's years here. Okay. The oboe works here almost certainly because of his early patron, Count Esterházy. Okay, so the first work is a concerto for oboe and orchestra in G major, and I want to just say, just in the beginning, you're going to probably be hearing this right at the beginning of spring, and this is the album you want to be listening to because it's just sunny and cheerful and in major keys, and it really just kind of just have this kind of spring-like optimistic quality to it in these all of these works. The concerto for oboe and orchestra in G major, which is tracks 1, 2 through 3 on the album, survives as a set of parts in the music collection of the Moravian Brethren of Zeist, the Netherlands. This oboe concerto shares many characteristics with Wranitzky's early violin concertos of the 1780s, which neither of us is familiar with, so that doesn't help much. Anyway, this starts Allegro Moderato, first movement, and let's see, Daniel describes this as a gallant principal theme, and interchanges between the violins prepare the ground for the entrance of the soloist. The solo part is more lyrical than virtuosic, and the passage works often revolve around quick scalar passages. I think I have an extra word there. There's no cadenza in the first movement, which is characteristic of Wranitzky's concerti and rather unusual, in fact. Okay, so I said this movement, this piece has a nice, elegant liveliness to it, and Marek Štilec, the conductor, has certainly gotten a handle on this music. It's just flowing really nicely. I believe that's a harpsichord chiming away in the background at the beginning of the very simple second theme, and I really love the sound of it. Well captured, sort of in the background. The oboe is lyrical and melodic as promised, and Veverka has a really gorgeous tone. That's one of the real attractions of this album, is hearing his tone and his playing.
Yeah, nice tone, and I really liked his varied articulation. That was one thing that came out to me as I followed the score. The score is, just the note values are there, but his choice of, which notes to articulate and staccato, legato are just flowing really nicely. And the other thing on this whole recording, which is different from what we've heard with the orchestral works, which are, big and, full
they get
instrumentation.
Into some dark tonal areas. These works really don't, or if they do, they come out of them pretty quickly. So
this gave me a new appreciation for how good Wranitzky was with, writing great melodies, because they come out in the solo lines and they seem to be endless, and here it's mainly these happy themes, because we're dealing mostly in all these major type of passages.
And we're also dealing with the oboe. We remember the Pēteris Vasks oboe concerto that we did,
kind of
and
things.
He called it he said he can't shake the pastoral image, and he wrote a pastoral concerto for it. That seems to be the case with Wranitzky too. I think it's just associated with that, and it really is uplifting. This is a very uplifting album, all the way through. So Veverka's tone, I said, has a liquid, flowing quality to it. The accompaniment has good energy. In fact, it seems to pick up after the soloist phrases in order to complement him. So once the soloist comes in, and then we hear the accompaniment come back, they seem like they've kind of been injected with some new life. I think he kind of really lifted them up. I'm also paying special attention to the light accompaniment as the oboist plays. It's all elegantly taken. Very classy orchestration from Wranitzky in those passages. The movement has the form and sound of a classical era work, so you can think Haydn and Mozart. It sounds a lot like that. Musically speaking, elegance was never done better than it was in that era. And this movement is a prime example of that sense of elegance. It's just, I think, elegance when I hear this. Second movement, Adagio. So the traditional slow movement. Only strings support the oboe in this movement. The embellishments are increasingly florid. This is Daniel's notes now. There's a cadenza before the end. Veverka's tone and lyricism really shine in this movement. I think, this is me now. The rhythmic pattern remains the same, but the accents suddenly change underneath the solo, and I thought this was really cool. Like, as the soloist is playing, you have like one chun chun chun, one chun chun chun, then you have one chun dun. It keeps kind of changing its kind of profile. It was really nice. I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. I really like it when you have the soloist playing, but then there's all these like little kind of winks sort of coming from the orchestra, because of the orchestration, not because anything's amiss or anything. A lot of ear candy in this movement. I liked it a lot. Yeah,
nice cadenza too on here.
Yeah, nice cadenza as well, I should have mentioned. Cadenza in the second movement, huh? Boy. Okay, third movement, Rondeau in 6/8, a hunting rhythm. In fact, all of these works on this album are going to have rondo hunting type themes. There are brief fermatas before the rondo theme returns, so you know when it's coming. A fermata, of course, is a slight pause. Okay, this particular movement's hunt is rather gallivanting and confident. The oboe has some quick flourishes to play, all taken very clearly, as we should expect from this soloist. He sounds great. It's an excellent clear recording as well. There's one section between themes where the material takes a dark turn into the minor, which is really ear-catching because we really just haven't heard much minor in this work so far. Then a chirpy hunting theme returns and we reach the end. The movement is taken at a lively pace and the whole thing leaves one in high spirits. So we have a good opening to this disc. Okay.
What I noticed on here, a couple interesting things. There's a couple of short cadenzas, which are nice, but then I'm looking at the score and listening and noting the wonderful ornamentation that is added by the oboist here, because of course there are some trills and like appoggiatura things in the score, but there's a lot of added little tastes that I'm assuming are added and worked out with the soloist later. And then one thing that really stuck out to me, right about 4 minutes as you're getting into the piece, there's a series of these scales that go from D to D, so they're going up high. But and that's how they're notated all in the score. But the final one, he goes up to F sharp, so he goes up to the third of the chord, which really surprises you because
if you're following the score, it does.
Well, no, I noticed it when I was listening, how it just seemed, a little extra lift, and then I went back and listened, and I noticed it's not in the score, but I thought that was kind of a nice little uplifting addition. By the oboist.
Nice touch. Yeah. Okay, next we have tracks 4 to 7, and then tracks 8 to 10. Yeah, are both divertimenti. This was a pretty popular form in the classical era. Divertimento just means fun or something diverting or entertaining. And entertainment.
The interesting thing here is it said they're scored for optional horns. And I'm glad they're here. they shouldn't be optional because they sound really good,
Yeah. Okay, so there are 6 divertimenti in this set. We're going to hear 2 of them. The first one for oboe, strings, and horns in D major. This is number 6 of the set. Tracks 4 to 7. This, I'll give you, Daniel explains. This was advertised for sale by the Viennese copyist Lorenz Lausch in 1788. Okay, so historically speaking, we're getting towards the end of Mozart's life. This is the year he wrote his last symphonies. But it may have been composed earlier. A set of parts survive in the so-called Kaisersammlung in Vienna, the music collection of the Empress Marie-Thérèse, a major patron of Wranitzky. In all the works in this set, the oboe and violin take turns presenting the material. Violas occasionally have solos. The Allegro Moderato. This is a relaxed and lyrical movement, and I think one can almost say pastoral. One gets whiffs of the countryside as the oboe is heard first. As Daniel mentions, the violin has a big part in this. But I'm not seeing, is the player credited for this? Do we know who this is playing the violin solo? I didn't see the name in the notes. Anyway. Okay, it's an ideal relaxed pace for the movement. I enjoyed the rather rustic sawing of the violins and the accompaniment on the 2-3-4, because it's one of those chun 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 kind of rhythms. 1 2 3 4, and you hear like this kind of like sort of countryside violin kind of sound. Okay, the oboe seems to have more presence in this performance because maybe because of its timbre is so identifiable. The violin soloist, first of all, is it's a solo instrument that's out of the string ensemble. It doesn't have the same presence. It kind of sounds like the violinist has stepped out of the string crowd to have a word with the oboist, the way it's recorded. The violinist kind of, it's noticeable because it's a solo part, but it's kind of not as up front as the oboe is. That said, though, the effect, it's not a bad effect, really. But they don't sound like equals, is my point. And I think they should be, probably. But the horns peak in occasionally to add punctuation and accents to phrases, melting gorgeous melodies throughout, an immediately appealing work. We get to the menuetto, second movement, adds contrast, and Daniel calls this movement jolly. That's probably a good word for it. This is a lively minuet. They're usually not quite this bouncy.
It's got a trio with this kind of energy. Too.
Yeah.
At the end, yeah.
Right. It's immediately appealing, again, like the first movement was, and making you wonder how Wranitzky's music came to be forgotten for so long. A lively trio section matches the energy of the surrounding minuet. Yeah, it's there's a contrast, but it just goes in a different direction, but the energy is about the same.
And I really love the warmth that balances out with the horn tones entered.
Yeah.
It's just that extra timbre in it gives it that fuller, richness, and makes it really pleasing.
Yeah, and I noticed the violin has some, it sounds like it has like some kind of reverb on it, like some kind of a room noise that the oboe doesn't have. Again, I just wanted that to be more up front. Nevertheless, it can be heard, so that's not a problem. All right, next, third movement, the romance. The theme is presented by the violas before taken over by the oboe and violin. This sort of matches the first movement in pastoral feeling, but it's got a more romantic vibe. When I say romantic, I mean like being with a lover at sunset romantic. I don't mean like Franz Liszt romantic or anything like that. Okay? It's like, you and your honey together romantic, okay? This movement, I thought, has a theatrical quality to it, as though some love scene is being played out on a stage. There's sort of a coming together and moving apart, like flirtatious sense to it. It feels very theatrical to me, and all ends well. Of course, this is the classical era after all.
This one has some nice pizzicato counterlines in it too that I enjoyed. That happens
in a few of these works, actually. They're nice. Fourth movement presto, optimistic tune in the violin opens this rondo form finale, and the good mood prevails until the end, according to Daniel. And I think this also has a hunting feel to it. It has a quick 6/8 rhythm. With the triplets accented, you can hear them.
This is a real earworm. I can still hear it. I listened to this earlier today. That's really, sticks in your brain as a great little melody hook.
The thing that gave me the feeling of the hunt again too is also the oboe soloist, because he plays with this carefree joy at being on a horse outdoors feeling.
Yeah.
All right, so it's just all sunniness so far. It's kind of a good start to the spring. Tracks 8 to 10, divertimento for oboe, strings, and horns. Number 4 in G major. Okay, so this is the fourth of the set of 6. The Allegro is breezy and also carefree. I'm listening to this, by the way, as the weather warms up and spring is establishing itself in Japan. But, of course, that means I didn't listen to it yesterday when it rained all day and it was really cold. So I heard it earlier in the week. It was really perfect. I was in such a good place, and I heard this, and it was just really ideal. The contrast in this movement is very slight. All contrasting themes keep up the effervescent mood. There's something a little darker at around 4 minutes and 30 seconds, but it's quickly climbed out of, almost magically, In fact, it's almost like somebody like snaps their fingers and suddenly we're back in the major key again. You hear the darkness quickly evaporate as the oboe plays, like kind of like the darkness is sort of like a puddle, and the bright sun just sort of dries it up immediately. No puddles are going to survive in the sunshine of this movement, that's for sure. Okay, second movement, Adagio. This is a 3-movement work, by the way. Oboe and violin solo lines over a pizzicato accompaniment create an airy and tranquil atmosphere. Those are Daniel's notes. And this is where I picked out the pizzicati in the lower strings and the accompaniment. I really loved the way it sounded here. After the oboe introduces the theme, we get to hear the harpsichord make a transition to the violin's theme. Also a nice touch. Very pretty. I did enjoy the violin's slower theme and the oboe's duet with it at around 1 minute and 20 seconds. It's lovely the way Wranitzky... Go ahead.
No, the interplay there is great. And then they get the layered horn lines on top of that. And yeah, very nice.
Yeah. It's nice the way Wranitzky will introduce the second soloist midway through the solo line of the first on occasion, always providing pleasant surprises. And then later on, like the oboe will play the full theme and then the violin will answer, but sometimes they'll sort of like complete each other's sentences, as it were. They're each other's musical sentences. A lot of variety, really clever writing. Third movement, Allegretto. This is a calmer Contra Dance-like theme, which frames busier contrasting sections with solos for the oboe, violin, and first viola, as Daniel says in the notes. This one sounds old-fashioned. I guess the Contra Dance is what Daniel called it. Compared to the other 2 movements, I think the Contra Dance was on its way out by this period. I mean, they were still doing it, but it was sort of starting to fall out of favor. I think the chords were disappearing. It's pleasant, with an elegant bounce to it. So whenever I hear something like this, I think that he must have been in a situation, Wranitzky, where there were court people around, which I guess they would have been if he was working for an Esterházy.
One little thing in this movement that caught my ear, right? It's about 2 minutes and 8 or 9 seconds. The oboe line is, I think it's on half notes, but it's on an A, and then it goes to B flat, and then back to A and B flat. So it's this, half semitone going up that really is different from any of the other movement before, and so I guess it's alternating between like D major, G minor. So it's just this little alternating major minor thing that creates a lot of tension before it's like pulling back kind of a slingshot or something before it releases into the final part of the movement. So I thought it was a nice little device added there that stuck out from the rest of the composition.
Yeah, also the Contra Dance theme is sort of the rondo theme. This is another rondo. And it's easy to identify when it comes back just because of its sort of old-fashioned quality, whereas the departures are all sort of more classical or modern for the period.
Yep.
The last time we hear the theme, it comes back in double time, adding some excitement to the end of this movement and piece. I thought that was pretty nice, too. All right, then we end this album with tracks 11 and 12, a 2-movement Sinfonia Concertante for flute and oboe in C major, opus 39. Now, when you have a name like a Sinfonia Concertante, that means that the flute and oboe are equal partners here. And this, we have on the flute, Sylvie Schelingerová on the flute, along with Veverka on the oboe. This one... also, let's see. What did I say about this? All right, let's get Daniel's notes first. This was published by Wranitzky's main publisher, Johann Andre of Offenbach, in 1801, but was likely written considerably earlier. 2 years prior to this date, it was listed together with a now-lost concertante for oboe and cello, among the compositions by Wranitzky offered by the music copyist Johann Traeg in Vienna. All right. The first movement, Allegro, has this grand orchestral opening, and then the soloists enter together, then take turns elaborating the melodic line. This is Daniel talking now. Exchanges become more frequent and phrases shorter as tensions briefly build. The opening theme sweeps away all differences between the two soloists, and the movement finishes amicably. So it's kind of nice. He'll sort of give you this sort of snapshot of what's going to happen in the movement, and then when you listen to it, you can kind of hear how it plays out. The opening of this has the opening of a classical opera feel to it. It really sounds like we're going to... Yeah, it almost kind of has an overture type quality to it. I get the feeling I'm going to hear singing, and in a way, we are. Okay, this was opera was a very popular form of entertainment at the time. The orchestra introduces both themes without the soloist. It goes on for quite a while. The flute comes in first with an athletically played line. This soloist has presence. The oboe responds, and I have to say, this time Veverka is more distanced than the flautist, which I found odd since he was up front for the first three works. So he's kind of he's sort of the one in the back. The oboe's tone makes it easy to pull out of the crowd, though, because it's very easy to hear. They play beautifully together, though. I do like the cheerful accompaniment urging the soloists on. The second time we hear the soloists at 4 minutes and 20 seconds, the entrances are reversed with the oboe coming first. There's some nice echoing of each other's lines in this part. Upbeat ending. I really like hearing this. This kind of reminds me this whole like trading lines. I used to have. I once did this with a girlfriend that we would sort of kind of compliment each other without, when we were with people without kind of like any pause, like it was a musical line. And I'd say, well, I'm going out with her because she's so smart. And then she'll say to me, oh, but he's so intelligent. I was like, oh, but she's so, well dressed. No, he's so, we just keep doing this and totally nauseate everyone, of course. But,
we
were
I guess you ran out of compliments and thus the relationship was over.
Well, now that I'm middle-aged, I can't think of anything nice to say about anyone, so it's just a memory now. And that's why I enjoy music like this, because it's a nice memory of when I actually liked people. Anyway, let's go on.
On this one, I thought, the interplay is what makes this one so nice, these handed-off lines. And I especially liked the triplet variation interchange on there. I thought that was really cool, and there's some tricky lines in here, but not only technically but also artistically well phrased, and it's a little musical relay with no misses at all. It sounds really nice.
Right. I like the interplay. It kind of reminds me of it's nostalgic for me. It reminds me of when I was a good person,
when you were young.
Anyway, and that too. Yeah. Now that I'm middle-aged and bitter, except when I'm talking about music, I can get back and just remember how wonderful that was. Anyway, and how wonderful the 18th century must have been for if you liked music. Anyway, second movement and last movement, Moderato. This is a rondo again. This is Daniel's notes. It continues the playful exchange between the soloists. Brief and uncomplicated with graceful simplicity and sunny charm. And sunny really is the word I would use for this entire album, really. This has a skipping 6/8 rhythm, and if you can believe it, even sunnier and breezier than the first movement. The oboe sounds more present in this movement, more evenly matched with the flute, and there's a ponderous rhetorical moment at 3 minutes and 31 seconds, which is quickly swept away by the dancing accompaniment. The soloists join in the thematic merriment, and we end on as positive a note as is imaginable. So this is really an ideal record for the beginning of spring. The music matches its gentle breezes. The entire record was sunny and uncomplicated. Now, that's not to say Wranitzky's music is uncomplicated. I think the symphonies went into some more intellectual territory, but these seem to be written for the enjoyment of the audience and just make them feel good. This is a high recommendation if you're looking for something to lift you up. I hope you can get it. It's certainly available on streaming services, but highly, highly recommended. I really enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah, it's easy to listen to just because the melodies are so wonderful and varied and creative, and they stick in your ear. They're all positive and upbeat. There's a few, little minor passages that get navigated through, but then you're generally on to a lot more happy sounding, wonderful major melodies, lots of energetic rhythmic variations, different meters. There's a lot of 6/8, has that kind of hunt, chasing beat. And then the ensembles.
A lot of hunting on this record.
Yeah. The ensemble sounds tight and nimble. And Marek's got the tempos really locked in. It never sounds too fast, but everything sounds charged with, nice
It's got
bounce
energy now, yeah.
and positive energy. And despite, like you're saying, there's a few maybe places where the acoustic balance, something might not be, standing out as much as you think. Overall, the sound quality is very nice.
It is. In fact, the Oboe is generally really well recorded.
And so it's nice to hear this solo compositions from Wranitzky. And like I said, the oboe soloist here has a wonderful tone, and it's really nice to listen to. So definitely add this to your Wranitzky list. And thanks for the CDs, Daniel. This is going to go right next to volumes 1, 2, and 3 on my CD shelf.
See, on my CD shelf, it's going to go in the 2022 section. So,
okay.
But it'll be next to any other Wranitzky albums that come out in 2022, because I have so many CDs that I can't just put them in the middle of a shelf. So I've decided to just kind of have a different section for every year now.
Okay.
Because I'm insane. Oh, I do want to mention that despite all the hunting movements, no animals were harmed in the making of this recording.
I think I ate a few while I was listening to it, but
there is that.
There is that.
Oh, well.
Yeah, anyway, check it out. Works for Oboe, Paul Wranitzky, the Wranitzky Kapelle, directed by Marek Štilec, and it is, again, on the Arco Diva label. And I'll put the Wranitzky Project page where you can find out more about Daniel's work making this music be realized in the description.
I wonder if that's their own label. I guess now that I've asked, we're going to have an email telling us. Daniel's great in that he writes to us all the time.
Yes.
Unlike our other listeners, please write to us. We'd like to hear from you.
I should say, at this point, I could say for jazz, but last week we featured...
That's right.
Peter Garifas's debut album, a fine Hungarian pianist.
Actually, maybe you should say this in the jazz section, just because I think people...
Yeah.
The reason we structure this program like this, classical and then jazz, is that instead of doing classical jazz, is that we think there are going to be people who are only going to want to listen to the jazz section and people who are only going to want to listen to the classical section, so we kind of separate them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did hear from Peter Garifas.
Yeah, we did. I'll talk more about it later. Because it was a debut
recording. He wrote to us in other ways, yeah.
And I've got a really great new debut recording, another one this week. Looking forward to that.
I know which one it is.
Yeah.
Because it kind of picked up my ear too.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, going on with the classical section, the next album is an album called America, and the violinist on this is Daniel Hope on the violin, and this features the Zürcher Kammerorchester and also the Marcus Roberts Trio, and it's released by Deutsche Grammophon Records. So Daniel Hope, he's... Okay, let me tell you a little bit about him. He was born in Durban, South Africa. He's of Irish and German Jewish descent. His maternal grandparents lived in Berlin and escaped Nazism. His father is the novelist Christopher Hope, and his mother, Eleanor Hope, worked as assistant to Yehudi Menuhin. Wow. This is quite a family to grow up in.
Yes.
Due to his father's anti-apartheid views, the family moved to London, when Hope was 6 months old. So he's, for all purposes, I guess you could say he's British. He was also the violinist of the Beaux Arts Trio in 2002. He replaced whoever was in there before. The Beaux Arts Trio were a long-standing a trio who had gone on for years and years. His decision to leave in 2008 ended the trio. I guess they weren't going to get anyone like him. Hope has put together various themed classical albums like this one. There's one on the Belle Epoque, there's one on Baroque music, and one on a program where the violins he played were owned by Jewish musicians before and during the Holocaust. And if you want to hear that one, it's called Violins of Hope, also on Deutsche Grammophon. But this one deals with America, and it's really American popular song, but really sort of American jazzy song, the American songbook and that era. And this is quite a program. He goes through quite a lot of music.
It's like a picnic basket that's jammed full of like every American taste from a certain period that you could want, and a few surprises too. Yeah,
shoehorned onto a single CD that's 82 minutes long. Yeah. Remember when CDs had to be 74 minutes? Now they can write on the edges of them or something and get up to like 83 or 84 minutes on them.
Yeah, I mean, this has got Gershwin, Bernstein, Copeland, Ellington.
Yeah, it's not all jazz, but it's mostly. I think of it as a
Sam
jazzy
Cooke.
album mostly.
Yeah. How do you get all of these ideas on one disc? It's pretty amazing, the programming.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, let's go through this. It's also got a variety of approaches to the music as well. Okay, tracks 1 to 5. George Gershwin, one of the great songwriters of all time. We have Gershwin's Song Suite for Violin, Jazz Trio, and String Orchestra. And the Jazz Trio is the Marcus Roberts Trio. Marcus Roberts is a jazz pianist. He's from New Orleans, or at least he studied in New Orleans. He's a seasoned jazz player from the. I think he studied with Ellis Marsalis, if I recall correctly. I didn't look this up beforehand. And this also features the Zürcher Kammerorchester. All right, so the string arrangements by the Zürcher Kammerorchester are by Paul Bateman, and the Marcus Roberts and J. Master Music did the jazz arrangements. So this is quite an everything in the kitchen sink approach to these 5 tracks. Okay, they're all popular Gershwin songs. The first one, Fascinating Rhythm, from the musical Lady Be Good. Hope gives us a nice dancey rhythm, and I really enjoyed the classy piano accompaniment from Marcus Roberts on this, as well as his glittering solo. But I wasn't too crazy about the string arrangement. In fact, this is a good album, but the strings kind of got to me. I think they brought back memories of Mantovani when I was a kid, even though it didn't really sound like that, but it just kind of put it in my head. The strings are pretty discreet, but it was too much. There was the drummer in the Marcus Roberts Trio is hitting the ride cymbal on the drums, and you're hearing the strings at the same time. It felt like it was a little too much. I would have liked to hear only the trio. I don't see why he didn't just add himself to the trio on this.
I don't know. I didn't. I was imagining if this were played on a larger orchestra, and that I would. So
with other colors. Maybe.
I actually wrote that I kind of enjoyed the lightness of the chamber group here and throughout the album, and that's what made it possible for me to listen to everything in like one setting. Even though it's 80 minutes, I never felt like the weight of the ensemble sound sort of tired me out. So I felt the string orchestration and just the size of the group was kind of sparse and light.
That was at least
so I could float along through it.
Yeah. The Mantovani comment that I made doesn't really hold water, but it just kind of I still thought back to that when I heard it. That's the thing. Another thing about these 5 tracks, and especially. Well, not necessarily especially this one, but I really think Marcus Roberts steals the show with his solo. He's just so good and has a genuine jazz pedigree, whereas Daniel Hope has this really kind of nougaty sweet sound, sort of a little bit like James Ennis, if you remember what he sounded like. So it's he has a very appealing sweet sound, and he's got a good jazz rhythm. He's got at least the sense of timing, which a lot of classical musicians, when they play jazz, they won't leave much space. I mean, Daniel Hope will, but then when you hear like Marcus Roberts come in, you can just kind of hear, oh, this guy's like a real jazz player, because he's got that real sense of swing that Hope kind of has a little bit, but not quite to the same extent. The piece has a good swing feel to it in general, which you would expect from the Marcus Roberts Trio being on it.
Yeah, the trio keeps it swinging.
They're fantastic through these 5 tracks, by the way. The second track is Summertime from Porgy and Bess, a very famous tune. Nice transition, by the way, into this. These are all sort of linked by some sort of improv or prearranged linking music. The trio gives the rhythm a cha-cha rhythm, which is a little unique. A cha-cha-like rhythm. Oh, not cha-cha. No, it's a cha-cha, cha-cha. Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
Not a cha-cha, sorry. I made this. I just wrote that down.
Verbalized it. Yes.
Verbalized, yeah, sorry. It's okay, and the violin silkily plays over that. And once again, though, Robert steals the show with his bluesy left-hand piano and riveting solo in the right hand. He just changes the whole feel by himself and just sounds great. The drums follow his left-hand rhythm, giving it a good accent. And, Hope is good, but he's just he doesn't have that same kind of quality in this music that Roberts does. I could have done without the strings in this too. I'm gonna leave my
you wanted
it
to be a jazz album.
I did. When I was hearing Marcus Roberts, I really wanted it to be a jazz album, to be honest. Okay, next is Swonderful from the musical Funny Face. I wouldn't mind seeing some of these musicals. One or two of them have been revived. They're kind of lightweight, and they have a lot of jokes about what do you call it when you couldn't drink? What was that year called? Prohibition, right. I was thinking abolition. No, prohibition. Prohibition. Okay. Again, I liked Marcus Roberts' solo transition into this piece. It starts a little unusually because this is like a really upbeat tune, and it kind of starts sort of slowly, a little surprise. The violin plays the intro slowly, and the strings add a bit of period class in this one, I thought. I find them distracting, as we already know, but you won't necessarily. Because I think they're adding warmth where there's already warmth. At around 1 o'clock, at around 1 minute, the 1 minute mark, we get the famous upbeat melody. It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun. Robert shines again with some adventurous scalar work, followed by another classy solo, and the drums swing pretty hard. Next, one of my favorite Gershwin tunes, The Man I Love, from Strike Up the Band. No segue. There's a pause between these two. The string orchestra start this piece. This is a really long track at 8 minutes and 30 seconds. It's usually just a 3 or 4 minute song. The drums play with brushes and add some old-timey feel to this track. Hope takes most of the thematic material. He's got a sweet nougaty tone, as I mentioned. Every time Roberts comes in, however, his jazz credentials stand out. His feel is so authentic that he practically turns the tracks into a jazz track. And I wanted to go off with him, really. He takes another eloquent solo here. The bass and drums play in an old bluesy style, almost Muddy Waters-like. In fact, Roberts turns his solo into a blues, which is kind of interesting for this tune. It doesn't really sound like a bluesy tune when it's sung. Hope goes for something more, I said schmaltzy, because he's really more in line with the strings, I feel here. In comparison, and the strings highlight that, he has a good feel, Hope, but again, Roberts is really the one who's drawing my ear. Finally, the track we always hear from Gershwin, I Got Rhythm, from the musical Girl Crazy. A quick bass starts this out. The piano sets the feel as the violin plays the famous rhythm. This is given like a swing dance rhythm. You really feel like you could imagine people like dancing to this in the 1920s. There's something about all this that has the classical approach to jazz feel to it, like it's looking at jazz through a glass window from the outside. The bass takes a good solo in this, very lively, with a spray of ride cymbal accompanying, along with lightly brush-struck drums. The drums get a solo next. The drummer goes for something groove-oriented, but not swing. It's a bit of a change from the flapper-style rhythm that we got at the beginning. Flappers were all those dances they did in the 1920s. Yeah. Check out YouTube if you don't know what I'm talking about. We jump right into that with Robert's solo, and you already know what I'm going to say about it. It's great. It's sad that he takes his leave of us after this track. There's no more Marcus Roberts on this album. I would have listened to him all the way through, really creative with his iterations of the melody. All right, so the Gershwin tunes are over, and then we get a Sam Cooke tune. A change is going to come.
Yeah, who knew that Sam Cooke would be on Deutsche Grammophon?
I know, right? Anyway, this is also arranged by Paul Bateman for a voice, violin, and piano, and the vocalist here is Joy Denalaine. And Sylvia Teresa is playing the piano on this piece. Denelaine sings this song soulfully and exceptionally well. I was drawn in by her voice. I feel like Hope's presence here is obtrusive. Again, I wanted to listen to... He's got really good partners on this album, but they sort of outshine him in this idiom. I wanted to hear Joy Denelaine here. And we do, but then Hope is playing during this. It's his album, but when there's a singer, you want to hear the singer, so I don't know. I'm glad he put it on. Next, we get Leonard Bernstein, West Side Story Suite for violin and string orchestra. Boy, this music just never gets old. There's even a new movie now, the Steven Spielberg West Side Story, which I haven't seen, but I'm guessing all the songs are in it.
I wonder what they've changed.
I don't know. I hope the songs are all there.
I hope so, yeah.
That's really what matters. Anyway, the Zürcher Kammerorchester are the only accompanists here. So this is the first time on this album we're hearing Daniel Hope with the orchestra, the string orchestra, chamber orchestra, actually. The first track is America, which Anita sings with her Puerto Rican girlfriends, I guess. And I think Maria is in this track too. This is in the musical. So this is pretty good. Hope doesn't vary his tone much. He really relies on that beautiful sound that he gets. This doesn't really have much electricity to it, but it puts the work across well. I think the vocals kind of really put this through the roof. Track 2, Maria, one of the most famous songs of the 20th century, at least in America. And I thought this interpretation was schmaltzy. Hope pours the syrup on this famous melody. His sweet nougaty tone are good for it, but I think it's too much with the other strings. Next is Tonight. This is a duet between Tony and Maria. See, I was in this play in high school, so that's why I know all these things.
Well, what part did you play?
I was, I think, shark number 3.
Oh.
I got to dance. I didn't have to sing, though, so that was cool. Anyway, this is a little better Tonight, with the orchestra growing wistful as the violin articulates the melody in a straightforward way. No, by the way, when I said I was in this musical in high school, I don't mean I was like in a Broadway production of it. I mean I was in the high school musical that my high school did of it. Okay, let's not get too excited over there. Yeah,
now go home and make your costume. Put on your bandana.
I did wear a bandana. I am sorry to say.
I had the right vision in my head.
You really did. Leather jacket. Just think of the whole thing. Okay. Daniel Hope likes showing off his tone when he goes for the high notes, and we get some here, but he plays mostly in his lower range. Okay, track 10. This is number 4 in the suite. Somewhere, the beautiful duet between a jet. I think this is Tony and Maria. Actually, this is a duet. And then some of the Jets and the Sharks take it over. I did not sing on this one in the High School Musical.
Oh.
No.
Did they have New York accents when they sang it? Somewhere. Oh, boy.
Probably, but we didn't notice it at the time.
You didn't notice it, yeah.
It would have been authentic, though, because the story does take place in New York.
Right.
Somewhere. That one's for you, Rich, my brother, okay? All right. This is one of the more magical songs in West Side Story. Everybody thinks of Maria. It's so famous, but this is so beautiful. It's such a great tune. Hope takes... I wish I wrote this, man. Leonard Bernstein, huh? He's a... That guy had way too much talent. He was a conductor. He's a great classical composer. And then he wrote hit musicals as well. Yeah. Unbelievable. Just these immortal songs. These are this whole musical. It's really amazing. Hope takes it with this song Somewhere with a nice dreamy quality at the low end of his instrument and climbs into the middle range. Then we have track 11, A Boy Like That. This is Anita sings this to Maria. This kind of reminds me a little bit of My Man's Gone Now from Porgy and Bess. It's sort of a similar sort of foreboding sort of rhythm to it. This is like menace from the string orchestra. You need percussion to put this across, though, I think. This is welcome after all these gorgeous, silkily played melodies that we've heard so far. Hope draws a fair amount of menace from his instrument at the low end, and he pretty much stays there. And then Maria answers Anita's, you're dating a guy who killed your brother. I gotta say, I think I'd be a little suspect of that too if that had happened. But she responds with "I Have a Love," which is track 6, and she appeals to Anita's, having been in love too. Something women understand that we men just don't. Anyway. The violin keeps to the low end to begin Maria's response to Anita's accusation and plays touchingly. I also like the string orchestra here, for a change, when it plays its gossamer delicate accompaniment. It's a nice arrangement. And I don't think this is by Paul Bateman. This might be like an original sort of by Bernstein. It doesn't say Bateman's name on it, but I'm not sure. The 7th part, this is track 13, is the famous Mambo at the... I guess the high school gym when the Jets and Sharks are kind of wherever they are doing this party is. This rhythm doesn't really quite suit a string orchestra. They wind up playing these disconnected angular melodic lines to put across the mambo rhythm. I think it needs percussion.
Yeah,
Hope is practically inaudible in this. He might not even be playing. I'm not really sure. He's playing at his higher end all the way through and blending in with the orchestra. Okay, next we get a piece we've heard, I think, twice already. This is the 3rd time. By Florence Price. And this is her Adoration, arranged for violin and string orchestra by Paul Bateman. We heard a violin and piano version of this, which I think is the original. This features the Zürcher Kammerorchester with Kammerorchester with Daniel Hope. Hope gets a touching duskiness to his tone when he needs it, and it's very effective here. He's a very melodic player, and this is a work that suits his talents well. It's a really nice work. I'm not sure if this is the best played version I've heard of it, or if that I'm really starting to warm to it because I've heard it so many times now. Because it's starting to get in my ear. It's a lovely work. Give it a listen. Florence Price, Adoration, in one of its many versions. All right, next we go to Aaron Copland, At the River, from Old American Songs, Set 2. Now, before I talk about this, I think it's Old American Songs, Set 1, that has a tune in it. What?
Set 1 comes first. There's a long time ago, right? Before At the River.
Does he play that on this?
Yeah.
Really? No, At the River. He doesn't do long... Well, track 15 is At the River. They might actually do a little bit of Long Time Ago in it, but I didn't notice. Anyway, I just want to mention, in set 1 of Old American Songs, there's a tune called I Bought Me a Cat. Which, just listen to it. Okay? It's perhaps the most annoying song ever. Do you know this song?
I've heard it, yeah.
Yeah, it's not on this album, thankfully. But I've heard it's kind of like now Copland wrote it as sort of like the comic ending to the set. Right. But let's just say it hasn't aged well, okay? It's got all these like animal sounds in it, like I bought me a cat, my cat pleased me, I fed my cat on yonder tree. And then it says, my cat says fiddle I fee, you know. And then he's making all these like animal sounds. And at the end of the song, he says, I bought me a wife.
Ooh.
Guess what sound his wife makes? She says, honey, honey. Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
Give it a listen, feminists. You'll love it.
I guess that's why they didn't put that on this album.
No, but I don't think we're going to hear it recorded for some time, but it's been recorded, you know, like back in the day. It's just some sort of an old-timey thing. I think that's what he intended it as, but just like as a memory of what American songs used to be like, because he collected these, okay? This one, At the River, we're back to the album now. Honey? Oh, God. Now I'm thinking of that song. It's so annoying. God. Anyway, At the River, it's an old hymn. Charles Ives set this as well. It's really popular, and I imagine it's still sung in Protestant churches. It's a really beautiful tune. This is orchestrated by Paul Bateman, by the way. I think Hope plays this too slowly and drawn out. Or maybe I'm just thinking of the Charles Ives version, which is a little quicker. The arrangement comes across as schmaltzy, where the strings come in. I like the second part of the melody, which I feel is done well by Hope. The strings are just too much strings. We're
getting to use that word a lot on the podcast. It's a good one, right? Schmaltzy, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like schmaltzy. Some people do, though. I don't want to like put people off of it.
It's generally not, it's overly done, sweet tackiness. For any non-New Yorkers who haven't heard schmaltzy, I don't know if schmaltzy is widespread throughout the English-speaking world. I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, track 16, Hoedown, from the ballet Rodeo, or Rodeo as they pronounce it. It's rodeo, but people pronounce it Rodeo because they're pretentious, I guess. Yeah. You have to sound like you're... You have to sound like you're...
going to the rodeo this evening.
Yeah, I know, exactly, right? Because if you listen to classical music, you have to sound like a snob, right? This podcast is trying to do away with that image, okay? We're calling it rodeo here, okay?
Go to the hoedown.
I don't think there's a classy way to say hoedown. No,
probably not.
Yeah, this is well done by the orchestra. I like this. I think we're hearing too much of this sound on the album, though. I'm not sure if Hope is on this track. Unless he's just mixed in there, but I didn't really hear him standing out. Anyway, track 17, Duke Ellington, Come Sunday, from Black, Brown, and Beige, arranged for violin and string orchestra by Paul Bateman. A name that's starting to make me shudder because I know there's going to be strings.
You're going to hear this again on this program just by chance in a little snippet later on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Zürcher Kammerorchester accompanying again. Hope stretches out this melody in a romantic era way. This time he's really going for schmaltz, I think. Because Ellington never played like this. The strings come in after a minute of solo violin has passed and set a glimmering backdrop for the violin to play over. Actually, I did like the string arrangement on this one. So the solo violin plays alone for the first minute of this. Okay. Next, Kurt Weill.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Kurt Weill, Weill, Kurt Weill, the German immigrant to America, not the modern guitar player, Kurt Weill, Ville. This is a different guy. Okay. Who's pretty good, by the way, although I don't know that I'd classify him as adult music. He's not kid stuff either, but he's college guy. He's college student stuff. I like him. But anyway, this is the Kurt Weill, the songwriter from the mid-20th century. Actually, from the early 20th century. Yeah, because he died in 1950.
Lots of songs that became jazz standards, yeah.
Yes. Well, they're great songs.
These three here, yeah. 4, rather.
Yeah. Okay. American Song Suite for violin and chamber orchestra. This one features the Zürcher Kammerorchester, again, with Joscho Stephan on guitar and Alexander Ponet on percussion.
Yeah.
Apologies if I didn't say those names right.
The guitar is a nice addition at this point. I get a little extra addition to the instrumentation.
Yeah, we needed the timbral sort of variety a bit by this point. This is an 80-minute album, remember. It's a long time. Okay, first we get September Song from the musical Knickerbocker Holiday. I really wouldn't mind seeing some of these again, because I've never seen them. They're just really old. Okay, the violin and guitar trade the melody back and forth in this track. I can't get past the schmaltz. There's a more modest middle section to this piece. Okay, great tune though. I don't want to insult the tunes. I love all of this music. Just being American myself and just loving all those American songs. So great to hear these melodies. Track 19, My Ship, from the musical Lady in the Dark. Much like the previous track, taken in a period style, schmaltzy way. I do like the addition of the guitar to these tracks. 3, Speak Low. This is a popular tune from the musical One Touch of Venus. This is track 20. The segue to this piece is by the string orchestra. This has the 1920s dinner orchestra style. I imagine myself at a table with my honey listening to this giant orchestra play. Oh, this isn't a very big orchestra. With guitar adding arpeggio flourishes as the violin plays the melody. And you're not going to do a Kurt Weill melody without number 4, Mac the Knife from the Three-Penny Opera, one of the most famous jazz standards ever since Ella Fitzgerald sang it. And a lot of people do it now. This is very nice. Chugging melody by the orchestra. The violin plays the familiar melody straightforwardly. The guitar adds a few flourishes. I really liked this. The rhythm picks up and the melodic approaches vary in appealing ways as the piece goes on. And we end the program with Samuel A. Ward. Ever heard of him? Well, he wrote America the Beautiful, a tune everybody knows, at least everybody in the U.S. This is arranged for violin and chamber orchestra by Paul Bateman. He did all the arranging on this album. And features the Zürcher Kammerorchester. I'm just pronouncing this worse every time. This has a dusky accompaniment by the orchestra as the violin understatedly plays the melody. This is more sweet than anything else. Not the bombastic style we usually get with this tune. This performance is touching. I liked it. It's a nice way to end the album. And Hope gets a touching, quiet tone at the end. So my conclusion for this is just great tunes all the way through. I didn't think there was enough variety in the approach to hold my interest for the entire 82 minutes. It was a little too schmaltzy for me. I could see listening to it again, though. I mean, I didn't dislike it. I understand that Hope and Bateman, the arranger, are going for a popular approach, but I would have preferred something more straightforward or jazzy, personally.
Yeah, I really liked the program. I like I said, how can you pack much more American music that a classical orchestra can play, this kind of pop-oriented music into one place? That's pretty impressive. I liked the lightness of the orchestra. I liked Hope's playing. I think when you try I
think I'd like him better in more classical fare.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear his Belle Epoque album.
But when you combine orchestra and jazz trio, sometimes you get, a bit of a Frankenstein kind of result that's neither of each world, or one overpowers the other. So like you kind of feel like, when the jazz trio is in here, it sort of, pulls more towards to the jazz side and makes you want to wish that you were listening to, the jazz version of something. I can see those kind of things going on. A few of the things get a little schmaltzy, as we've said. But overall, I liked the program and the lightness of the instrumentation. Just pulled me through it. And, you can't get any richer in terms of these great melodies with Gershwin, Bernstein, Copland. All this stuff is great to hear. Maybe it's too much all in one place. I don't know. I think it's worth a listen. And you realize how these great melodies formed the basis for so much of American music.
It's got schmaltz appeal.
Yeah.
That would be a good episode title, actually. We'll have to file that one away. I don't think,
The only thing it's missing is a Stephen Foster tune or something. Then we could...
that would be really early, even earlier.
Yeah.
All right, now we can't call this episode Schmaltz Appeal because of the next album.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. This is my contemporary composer pick of the week.
No, I got to tell you, I made the mistake of reading the album notes before I listened to this one. And I have to say it was false advertising. Anyway.
You think so?
Well, at least the expectations it created of what I was going to actually hear. But
Actually, this didn't sound like I expected it to either. Because, this is, first of all, we should mention Hans Abrahamsen, who's a Danish composer, born in 1952. And it's his biggest orchestral work called Schnee, which means snow. And it was composed in 2006 to 2008. It also features the Lapland Chamber Orchestra, conducted by John Storgårds. That's what the A with the circle is, an O, like a U, I guess.
Ooh.
Storgårds. He's a Finnish conductor and a violinist. Okay, this is on the Da Capo label, which is a Danish label, and it's an SACD, so you get that nice DSD quality. I have to say, my current SACD player, it's really a Blu-ray player that has SACD in it, made by Sony, streams in DSD, and I think it makes a difference. It's got a nice, luscious sound to it. So I got to hear this.
Did these sound luscious?
Luscious isn't the word, but they did sound very present, let's say. Okay. Present. All right. Okay. I read now, I was really eager to hear this because Abrahamsen did a piece in around 2013 called, I can't remember the name of the piece. Oh man, I got to look this up now. This is terrible. Anyway, it was a song cycle. Man, this is the worst. Getting middle-aged is terrible. Anyway, I can't even find my link here for this. Oh, it's called Let Me Tell You. Okay, sorry. There's a song cycle that did Let Me Tell You that I thought was exceptionally beautiful. It was sung by Barbara Hannigan, and you can get that on a CD. I would highly recommend hearing that. Just stream it. Let Me Tell You by Hans Abrahamsen, sung by Barbara Hannigan. All right, but this is an orchestra work called Schnee, or Snow. And I really kind of crammed this in here because I wanted to do it before spring started, but I guess we're just hitting it on the last day of winter when the snow is finally gone. All right. Then I read the notes. Oh, man, whenever you read about contemporary music, the way they describe it is sort of they're trying to describe some weird psychological state or something, you know. This is what he says, okay? The piece is basically about sensory experience of multidimensionality. That means that if you you want to be in an altered state of consciousness when you hear it, because it'll enhance your experience.
That's what I was missing. Okay,
maybe. All right. No, I think some whiskey would have done the trick, though. And the changing sensations of direction, because snow kind of blows in the wind and it's directed all over the place. The music's weightless softness. Now, weightless is a good word for this music. It really doesn't like land or make any kind of like impact. It does something else. It's not, which I'll try to describe at the end of this. It's not program music about snow, but a poetic performance, an esoteric symbol in white nuances. A very poetic description of what this is. And that's about as good a description as you're going to get, because it's really hard to describe what's happening in this music. Okay, now, the work is 13 movements, and they're all canons except for 3 intermezzos. A canon, I don't mean like a military cannon, that shoots cannonballs. I mean a cannon like row, row, row your boat. If you think about 4 voices singing row, row, row your boat, where one starts a measure later than the other, that's a canon. Different than a fugue, which continues in a different way. And Abrahamsen was moved to write this work after studying Bach's short, intriguing canons BWV 1072 to 1078. Abrahamsen, when he was arranging Bach's canons, said he arranged them with the idea that they might be repeated again and again, and this way of hearing music opened an entirely new and inspiring world of time set in motion for him. We're just going to have to take him at his word, because I really don't know what he's talking about. But I guess it led to this work. Okay, we can imagine that he arranged the canons to like continue the Bach canons without a pause, and it kind of gave him some sort of forever sort of feeling. Okay, depending on how you hear these canons, the music stands still, moving forwards or backwards. The proportions of the individual movements in Schnee advance according to a numerical system. Don't let this intimidate you. It's not math, okay? The duration of the 5 pairs of movements become gradually shorter. So the first 2 movements, Canon 1A and Canon 1B, last around 9 minutes. Canons 2A and 2B last 7 minutes each, so it's 14 minutes total. Canons 3A and 3B are 5 minutes, and the fourth canons... pair of canons is 3 minutes each, and the fifth pair of canons is 1 minute each. So it's kind of weird. It just sort of ends on this very short set of movements. One interesting thing about this is you'll want to hear this in headphones or in a stereo or in surround, which would be great because it's an SACD. You can do that. The musicians sit in two groups on either side of a percussionist. Strings are on the left, winds are to the right. See, the thing is, we're not supposed to like advocate altered states of consciousness, I guess, but that would really help with this work. You'd get that Pink Floyd sort of, strings in the left, winds in the right, kind of, two different ears having different sounds in them kind of feeling. And there's a piano on each side, so there are two pianos. All right, I'm going to attempt to describe this work. 13 movements. Canon 1A, labeled Ruhig aber beweglich, quiet but flexible. This is played only by the strings, the left side group. It starts with this ticking rhythm, which is barely audible. Most of this movement is at the threshold of hearing. You can hear the room noise more than you can hear the music. There's squeaking sounds on a string, the piano playing perhaps its highest note or key at the highest end. I don't know how the piano gets that sound. It gets like a plinking sound, but it's not really sounding a note. It just kind of sounds like the wooden part of the wooden stick that holds the hammer hitting the string, and there's no sound. It's got a gentle crystalline quality that brings snow to mind. Also, the title kind of helps with that. The volume gradually becomes louder for a moment, then fades back to the threshold of audibility. At about the 3-minute and 15-second mark, we get a harsh, squeaky sawing on the strings as the piano pounds away at its high notes. But it's not loud because it's in the high end of its range. I actually like the harsh timbre the violins get here. They're not loud enough to be grating, though they're making a grating sound. There's silence at 5 minutes and 15 seconds, and we seem to return to the beginning material with the very quiet, woody tapping on the piano, as well as very high notes quietly played. The beginning and the end of the piece are so quiet that it feels like the music is being heard over a great outdoor distance. And I guess a snowy one, too, so sound would be muffled. It wouldn't travel very well. Canon 1B, sort of the partner for Canon 1A, is labeled Fast, immer zart und stille, almost always tender and still. This is a different version of the music in Canon 1A. It's similar. It has more layers and open spaces and is rather like an extended double variation in a Baroque suite. Abrahamsen himself describes it as a painting in two versions with different colors. So you can think of it like that if you like. This movement is played by both groups, so we're hearing both sides of the orchestra here. And the percussionist is heard for the first time. But when you think percussion, you might be thinking like tam-tams or drums or, kettle drums or whatever. He's only pushing a sheet of paper back and forth on the table or on a drum head or something. It's very, very subtle. But it's intriguing. It really drew my ear in. We get some immediate change of timbre here with the percussion played along with the repeating piano note. It's actually very similar to the first movement, but with different timbres added, which I already said. I should mention, by the way, these are all canons, as I said, but I'm not following the canonic material. I'm assuming it's there. The middle, because they're called canons after all. There are a lot of repeated notes, and if that's going to be part of the canon, it's going to be hard to follow because you don't know when it ends and things like that. The middle section is the loudest yet, still not in the booming category, but all of the timbres can be clearly heard in this very clear recording. This is actually very well recorded, I should mention. Now, the piece quiets down again, but the material doesn't repeat. A slow flute melody begins the next canonic section. There's another pause, and the familiar material we heard at the beginning returns. I want to mention, in the middle of these canons, there are long pauses as though the material the orchestra sort of regroups and starts off on some other excursion. So if you hear pauses, it doesn't mean that movement is over. Okay, we get to the second pair of canons. First, Canon 2A. Lustig spielend, aber nicht so lustig, immer ein bisschen melancholisch. Funny. Lustig is like merry, like Lustige Witwe, the merry widow, I think. So happy, merry playing, but not too merry. Always a bit melancholic. I guess they achieved that here. This begins with the woodwind of Group 2, exploring a minimalist motif in dense and rapid turmoil. This is from the booklet notes. Accompanied by the piano, which has been prepared with paper. It reminds one of walking against the wind in swirling snow without being able to find the way. Okay, the opening has a sort of playful march quality to it, sort of like a children's march, and I guess that's the lustige direction. It sounds like it's actually in a quick 3/4, but the first beat comes so fast that it sounds march-like. If you think of the second movement scherzo of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, dun, da, 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 that's 3/4, but it's so fast that you're hearing the dun, 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 more in a more defined way than you hear the really fast triplets. It's also very quiet, near the threshold of audibility. There's a lot of that here. Again, snowy days are very quiet days, so I guess that's in keeping with the quality of that type of weather. There are a few pauses, then the canon starts up again. It goes more or less like this with very subtle orchestration until a flute starts breathily wailing out howling wind-like tones at about the 4-minute 45-second mark. I found this movement to be rather cute. It sounded like a sad circus troupe trying to be entertaining. Okay, the fourth movement, we get the first intermezzo. This is pulseless. And what's happening in these intermezzi, whenever you see an intermezzo, some of the instruments are tuned down to a slightly lower pitch. Now, it's not a full half tone down. It's usually like an eighth or a fourth of a tone. So we're dealing with microtones here. The interruption reminds us of traditional tuning, but here it has the reverse function. The ensemble will hang less closely together. The intermezzi function as pauses. He said this is Abrahamsen's notes, like the Sphinxes in Schumann's piano work Carnaval, if you know that work. They're food for thought, sort of. They're a moment of thought, so you can collect your thoughts. Here, the strings, the alto flute, the cor anglaise, and the bass clarinet are tuned down a sixth of a tone. This creates interference because the other instruments move away from the piano's immovable tuning, as well as from each other internally. Like ice, it is as if the music slowly melts through the three intermezzi, reaching a point at which, like an ice flow, it can break apart and glide away. This is an interesting place to put this. It's between the two canons. It's really just a minute of long held notes followed by about 15 seconds of silence. Canon 2B. This is the partner for the canon in track 3. This has the same direction for playing, lustige spielen. So it's going to be happy, merry playing. Both groups play in this one. The swirling now comes from all sides at the same time. This canon doesn't march like its partner does. It's more rhythmless swirling. The strings players tap on the strings with their bows to create a rhythmic feel as a mixture of wind and string instruments play swirling patterns. This all stops at one point for a pause and resumes the basic pattern in a slightly different way. It suddenly changes again and gets louder. There's a rather big change of pattern at about 2 minutes and 45 seconds, where the music plays at what sounds like the loudest since it started. Some pretty interesting glissando figures appear in the winds and piano after the 5-minute mark. All right. On to canon 3A. We're in the third set of canons, labeled sehr langsam, schleppend und mit Trubsinn im Tempo des Tai Chi. This means very slow, sluggish, with gloom, at the pace of Tai Chi. That's quite a musical description.
That's unique, yes.
Yeah, I think that might be unique in composed music. Tai Chi. All right. Here, the polyphony moves at such a slow pace that the ensemble appears to be a wholly new body with a different breathing pattern. Abrahamsen compares these two movements with Chinese Tai Chi exercises. This starts very quietly and features some shakuhachi-like breathy sounds blown across the flutes. The shakuhachi, by the way, is like a bamboo flute from Japan. The canon is indeed very slow, with lots of space before each note is sounded in a kind of Klangfarbenmelodie type manner. Klangfarbenmelodie is a word that Schoenberg invented to describe when different individual notes in a melody are played by a different instrument. So each instrument will play one note, and together it's a really cool effect, by the way. You hear it also in Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique in the March to the Scaffold movement, but it didn't have a name then. Schoenberg was the one who named it, but that was the first time it was ever done. It's really cool. We hear a different timbre. In this case, probably not on each note, but at least on each few notes. It's a nice effect. I always enjoy hearing something like that. I'd love to hear a whole movement written like that, where different instruments play like a different note, and it all comes into one big melody. The length of each tone lengthens until something more musically tangible is reached at the end of the movement. Canon 3B, same Tai Chi instruction. This starts with piano playing. The piano playing really the entire line with crystalline tones and harmonies calculated to provide an icy quality. I liked the harmonies that the piano played. There's some really dissonant notes in there. It sounded like could be augmented fourths, but I couldn't make it out. The music slowly crescendos until it reaches a comfortably audible volume in the middle of the movement at about the 2 minute and 30-second mark. And I think this movement is all piano. There might be some subtle other instruments in there, but it sounded like all piano to me. We arrive at Intermezzo 2. Here, the violin and viola slide down another sixth of a tone. This is only 1 minute and 8 seconds long. We hear the violin and viola sliding down into their microtones, and it's just long, drawn-out tones from both instruments. Canon 4A. We're getting shorter now. These are both 3 minutes long. Homage à WAM. That's Mozart. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Stürmlich, unruhig und nervös. Stormy, restless, and nervous. This is a contrast to the third movement canons. It's very restless, unlike the Tai Chi movements, which are very relaxed. Abrahamsen says this is a winter greeting to Mozart. Abrahamsen uses the same sleigh bells as Mozart in his snow piece, Die Schlittenfahrt, the sleigh ride, from his 3 German dances K605. That's the only thing he uses, the sleigh bell sound, and the rest of it is completely unrelated to Mozart. The material, if there's any other material for Mozart, I didn't identify it. It might very well be in there, but I think he's just using that timbre, the sleigh bell timbre, because Mozart uses it in his piece. This is pretty chaotic and gets towards being noisy, but the volume keeps it in check. It never gets very loud. Each instrument is busy with its own material, although again, I guess there's a canon in there. They're all called canons anyway. Canon 4B, Maggiore. Oh, this is in the major key, whereas 4A was in the minor key. This has the same instructions. This is a change of timbral picture with a lot of rumbling from the bass of the piano below. The music suddenly quiets in the middle for a bit, then gets busy again after 1 minute and 30 seconds. These movements are all relatively short now. Like I said, under 3 minutes. Then we get to Intermezzo 3. The piccolo, flute, and cello slide down a sixth of a tone. This is only 30 seconds long. Blink and you'll miss it. We hear the strings providing a light feathery bed for the piccolo, which only emits 2 long-held tones. And the cello's in there too. I guess the strings are the cello in this case. All right, Canon 5A. This is the rectus, and Canon 5B inversus. So rectus means upright, and then inversus would be like the mirror image canon. These are both 1 minute long, these movements. Labeled einfach und kindlich, simple and childish. This is described as an enchanted and naive fairyland where this and the inverted canon mirror each other and give us a glimpse into a snow-decked eternity. I said this had an enchanted woods crystalline ticking quality to it, and it's very brief. Okay, the inversus is really the same timbres with the same ticking quality provided by the piano line, only the canon is inverted here. And this movement is also a little longer. It's 1 minute and 50 seconds. It ends suddenly when it reaches the end of the theme. Okay, so this music is introverted, and it's very solitary music, and it provides a space for relieving happiness through freedom in an objective clarity, according to the notes. So, the question at the end of this is, do I like this? I don't think this is music you like or dislike. You have to like the state it puts you in. All right. It's sort of like puts you in a state, and you like that. You know, you don't really think, oh, I liked that movement. And it's just not like that. And I liked the state it put me in. The work puts the mind in a meditative place, making the environment quiet enough to evoke memory. So I think it really depends on the quality of your memories as to whether you'll enjoy this or not. If you're a restless type, I would stay away. My brother's going to hate this, by the way, because he likes to listen to everything we talk about. I can't see him liking this. But I think if you just sit down and put it on, and just focus on it, I think it'll put you in a good place for the most part. Let me know, by the way. Why don't you write to us in the email and tell us what you thought of this?
You can handle those responses.
That's okay.
Yeah, I guess, putting it that way, there was another recording we did a few weeks ago. I'm trying to think which one it was, but it was something about it exists and you respond to it.
What did we say that about? That was funny. That was funny. Yeah. I don't remember what it was.
How I felt about this. And I can maybe approach it more if I don't try to think of it as music as such.
Yeah, that's really what it came down to.
More of like as...
it's sounds. It's organized sounds.
Yeah,
really.
Structured sounds that... it's not program music, as we were saying. It's not depicting a snowstorm or a snowscape.
But it does have a snowy quality.
Right. So it's sort of... I don't know, a kind of impression of something like that. Yeah, there's some interesting sounds, surprising things. I really, I'm impressed with your description because it's much better than I would have been able to do with it. Yeah. I don't know. I won't have any...
Always looking for the positive, Russ.
I don't have any real attachment or anything to say about this in particular, other than the different timbres and things that happen could be interesting to listen to. And then you have these sort of strange sort of, I don't know, what is the palate of the ear? I don't know. But it's like a palate cleanse with the intermezzos.
Nice, yeah.
And then there's lots of space and gaps before you come back. It never really rises to any great volume. So you'll have to listen carefully, actually, to hear a lot of the soft dynamics of it.
Yeah, there are occasional like grating sounds, but they're not loud enough to really offend.
It's just rather befuddling to me, this whole composition. I don't have anything else to say about it.
as is the whole 21st century. So,
yeah.
So I think it's in line with that. Well, let me put it this way: did you like the space it put you in?
Yeah, I was ready to listen to something else when I got to the end.
All right, so you were relaxed. Let's just leave it at
relaxing,
that.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. So it left you relaxed. It's not really a relaxing piece, I didn't think, but it did kind of... Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm going to hear it again one day, but I think it's kind of more of like you sort of plan an evening with this. You don't just put it on. You know what I mean? Like you decide you're going to listen to it before you put it on. It's one of those recordings, Yeah,
don't pick this for your date night.
Or pick it for your date night and see what happens.
I don't want to hear any... I don't want to take responsibility for what happens at the end of that. All right.
We don't know. We don't know how women will respond to this.
You can't say we didn't give you variety this week in the classical.
we certainly did. Yeah. We aim to stretch the ear here in the classical section. Anyway.
All right. Well, there you have it. 3 very different releases in classical category. Now, it's jazz time, I guess. And, I'm really excited about these 3 I've got this week.
They were all good. Yeah.
For the past few episodes, I've had, specific themes. As far as instruments, we did trumpet and piano. This week, I don't have a theme other than that these are all new releases that all had something really special that caught my ear and made me want to talk about them right away. And maybe the one I just fell in love with the moment I heard it is this first one here. And
you talked about this one all week to me, actually.
I really
wrote
love
me
this.
several messages about it.
I can't stop listening to this because it's just so beautiful. And we're talking about a release called Indigo, which is the music of Duke Ellington. And this is on Vision Fugitive label. That's a cool name. Played by two French musicians, the clarinetist Jean-Marc Foltz and Stephan Oliva on
Those
piano.
French, man.
Yeah, and I think that's what gives this American music a new sort of, aspect, a new look. Because as we've brought up many times on the podcast, the French have a unique kind of way of experiencing timbre or highlighting those qualities. And I thought that was added here most nicely, particularly because Foltz uses mostly bass clarinet, which has that unique sound that we really like.
Both of us really love that sound.
So a whole album of almost all bass clarinet. And I found on all the tunes, in some places especially, Oliva's unique piano harmonizations bring a kind of almost impressionistic character to some of the tunes that really, takes Ellington's beautiful, kind of more subtle works into a new experience. So every time I listen to this, I find something really new and beautiful on it. And apparently this is a kind of anniversary recording for them of their first duo that they did 20 years prior. And so here they are with this portrait of Duke Ellington music. And other than the sound, I got to recommend this is going to go on my already pretty sure will be on my 2022 favorite recordings because it's going to take a lot to knock this out.
It's certainly going to go into my CD collection if it comes out on CD.
It's unavailable now currently. But you're going to want this even if you don't listen to it for the album cover.
It's got a great album cover. That's right.
The album cover is a picture that comes out of a still shot from Lawrence of Arabia, and you'll recognize that familiar duo of Peter O'Toole and Omar Sharif. But when you look on the right to see the Omar Sharif character, it's Jean-Marc Foltz playing bass clarinet with some camels in the background. So it's kind of an interesting.
Did they put Oliva's face over Peter O'Toole's or no? Or is that actually Peter O'Toole?
I don't know. They're kind of indistinct facial things, so you can imagine them. I don't know what. I know what Foltz looks like. I'm not sure Olivia's picture. I've only seen him in profile at the piano, but I just thought it was a really kind of eye-catching design.
Made an impression.
Yeah. So that's a pretty interesting cover. Anyway, let's go through some of these tracks here, picking up a lot of well-known Ellington tunes, and then some you may have not heard in a while. So it starts with the famous In a Sentimental Mood. This is a 1935 composition. Begins with this wonderful, warm bass clarinet, soft articulation. Oliva adds a lush rubato accompaniment and really close intervals in his harmonies. A little bit after, almost a minute and a half in, Oliva sets a more steady, slow beat to the melody and with chords for a while until it flows rubato once again. Foltz keeps it sparse and close to the melody, highlighting his fluid tone. It's a very lush and lovely start. You can see how they're going to treat these wonderful Ellington melodies. Track 2 is Solitude. This is from 1934. Rubato and sparse beginning again. Listen for some of the deep bass clarinet tones. Some of the tones that instrument can get will move your woofers if you've got your speakers playing.
My woofers are moving.
Oliva trickles out some sparse right-hand figures. There's a delicate touch between just spaced out chords, and it comes to the front for a little while on the piano, and there's also a really nice clarinet overtone that sneaks through. 3 minutes and 41 seconds. It's sort of an extra tone from space that comes in there.
Yeah, I want to mention that Foltz, he has this breathy kind of Stan Getz attack to his instrument too, and as though like just having the tone of a bass clarinet isn't enough, he has this really sensual way of shaping the melody.
Yes.
It's really just curvy and sensuous, and I just liked it a lot.
And one thing, I think it's kind of a brave thing to do, to take this material and just work through it with no rhythm instruments, just the piano when it adds that extra rhythmic element. But there's such free-flowing rubato nature through the whole thing. They're not worried about really establishing a lot of tempos. It's all focusing on the wonderful melodic development in these tunes, and their minds are completely synced, and it just works together so well. I've not heard many recordings that bring this kind of character to my mind. It's really wonderful. The next track 3, is Black and Tan Fantasy. This is from earlier, 1927, also credited to Bubber Miley with Ellington. So a really mournful bass clarinet intro here, some muted low piano percussive notes. Oliva brings in the swing rhythm with a descending bass line. They get a nice unison line together before a pause and more slow clarinet cries and improvisations. Oliva comes back low and dark to match the mood. Then Foltz really plumbs the depths of the instrument with some nice bends of pitch as well. Just before 5 minutes, it brightens up into kind of a major tonality again. Oliva gets a rubato swing going on his own, and then Foltz joins in for a restatement of the melody. Track 4, The Single Petal of a Rose. This is from the Queen's Suite, written in honor of the Queen, England, that is. I think it was written in 1959, but it wasn't released until the 70s, maybe 1976 or so, as a recording of suites.
Was this for her coronation or something?
I think so.
He was involved in that? Wow.
Yeah, he met the Queen. I forgot the exact story, Ellington. But this is it's a really lovely piece. It's got a piano intro with a pause. Then they play the melody in unison. And all of his chords voicing here, this is one of the spots where he gets a little touch of kind of impressionist French piano sound to it. It's really nice.
Always welcome to my ears.
Again, Foltz gets really down in the lower register. It's rubato, it's slow, and it's incredibly beautiful. A wonderful composition. And
he gets some really cool reedy honks in, too.
Yeah, really nice.
Love that sound.
Track 5, African Flower. This is from 1962 recording, Money Jungle. Moving piano figures, legato bass clarinet lines above. There's rhythmic sync with the piano left hand. Foltz is very vapor-like here. It's like a warm breeze just floating the notes. It's almost like he's breathing in his sleep, and they just kind of float out like that. Really delicate. Track 6, we heard on the America recording earlier. Here, it's just a little snippet, Come Sunday.
It's 23 seconds long.
Yeah, it's listed as prelude to the next track, 1942, and it kind of leads into Mood Indigo from 1930. Foltz breathily exhales the melody slowly with one nice reedy grunt added. This is one of Ellington's more famous melodies.
It's almost like he's just exhaling a breath and it's coming out as this melody. It's a really cool kind of like fusion between like breath and music,
Oliva interjects kind of higher chords, and they keep it lazy and hazy until Foltz rips this reedy tone, and it starts to pick up a bit into a little rocking swing for Foltz to solo over. Oliva gets some lines in too, and then Foltz plays some counterpoint really low, and this will move your woofers with some of the notes he gets in this track. It slows for a cadenza by Foltz that has some fluid tones and deep dips down, ending with a little melody snippet from the familiar melody. Track 8, Reflections in D. This is from 1953. This has got a bass clarinet intro. Then the piano comes in. Again, a nice little impressionistic touch by Oliva. Foltz fills in on low sustained notes and then joins in with the melody. And Oliva lightly touches out some intervals for the ending. Track 9, Sunset and the Mockingbird. This is also from the Queen's Suite. You get long sustained bass clarinet note with vibrato and rolling cluster chords on the piano. It gets a little more motion. All of his higher notes come out like trickling water as Foltz plays bird-like high register figures on regular clarinet. I'm pretty sure this is one of the spots where he switches over. Oliva gets some solo time, and then Foltz joins back in again with floating flute-like figures in his kind of breathing and articulation.
Yeah, we should mention we're talking about the Queen of England, right?
Right.
Because there are other queens out there.
Right. Okay. And then there's a mysterious overtone sound, 4 minutes and 7 seconds, that sort of escapes from the clarinet. And then a lone, harmonically contrasting piano figure ends the tune.
Wow. Really
just
great.
Floats from out there, yeah. Track 10. Now, this is a really cool one. It's a medley of a lot of Ellington tunes that are stitched together skillfully. And they're not listed in streaming, but they are on the album notes from... let's see. Where did I find these? I don't know. You can find them online. Anyway, it starts with Cottontail. Oliva plays the familiar piano figure, but it slows into the next tune, I Got It Bad. Foltz adds some regular clarinet, and Oliva does some rubato melody here. That goes into Such Sweet Thunder, that has kind of a familiar bass line in the piano left hand, which you'll be able to pick up if you know this tune. Foltz adds some bass clarinet and gets a cadenza that automatically kind of segues into Sophisticated Lady, where Foltz gets down low, and then that segues into Prelude to a Kiss. And the piano is joined by Foltz with a higher melody line on the bass clarinet. There's a pause. Then Isfahan, another well-known Ellington tune. Foltz plays the melody on bass clarinet, and it slows and has a pause before a rubato ending down low, and then into the next tune, not part of the medley, Caravan. It's a really famous tune, so their version of it is a little bit different because it's rather slow, and the famous intro, but a slower version of that. Foltz plays the familiar melody line on bass clarinet. Everyone knows this melody. Over Oliva's creative descending harmonic figures. Oliva keeps kind of a tide flowing with rhythmic left-hand figures, some triplet figures as well, while Foltz floats longing lines on top to the end. And then they end up with 12 Lotus Blossom, which is actually a Billy Strayhorn composition. That's got an interesting kind of history to it because the name of the song changed over time since he wrote it. It was like Hominy, and then All Roads Lead Back to You. And Johnny Hodges recorded it as Charlotte Russe. And then it became Lotus Blossom in 1959. It's a kind of interesting history. This one has a rubato start with some motion. Foltz blows the melody softly before he passes it off to Oliva, and then blows counterlines to that. Midway through, Foltz takes the melody again. Oliva is more soft and delicate in the middle of the keyboard without the low bass notes from the beginning. Foltz has a run-up higher that brings more energy and then repeats in the higher octave before finishing up with some almost subsonic tones and leaving Oliva to finish it off with some pretty last phrases. So this is a recording with great sensitivity and beauty. It's all open there, exposed in a very unhurried fashion, giving you the intricate melodies and harmonies of Ellington's music. And the music breathes almost like as a relaxed human as they move unhurriedly through all of these songs. So take the time to enjoy this in a peaceful setting. Block everything else out. The sound quality is wonderful. Just two instruments and beautiful music. High recommendation.
Yeah, we should mention also, this is the entire album is very what's the word, slow tempo, like or almost no tempo in some cases. It's quiet and it's ideal for late night listening. This is a really good record for that. And it's got these really lots of low frequencies as well. The whole album keeps the same mood without any contrast, but it's a really appealing mood. So I liked it a lot. It's gentle and unobtrusive all the way through. Sonically pleasing, like you said. It's a great recording, and this is a keeper. This needs to come out on a CD. We should pester them and tell them, put out a CD. I want this. I like the album cover too.
You don't get to hear so much bass clarinet all in one place. And,
and especially played like this too. It's got this again, this kind of like almost like liquid feel to it. You don't really feel like notes are changing as much as just kind of melting into each other and stuff. It's really good.
So woodwind instrument fans, Ellington music fans, this is great. And it has, obviously these two musicians love Ellington's music, and there's just that little sprinkling of French impressionistic added harmony that Oliva adds to that, with that love of timbre that the French do so well. So
what's not to like? There's all my favorite things about music right there.
You're gonna love it. This one's sweet without being schmaltzy. Yeah,
I guess we are gonna do our New York accents again. We just couldn't stop.
Couldn't stop. All right, next one, something completely different, but I liked this one for a lot of reasons. This is the Canadian guitarist Sam Kirmayer, and he's active in Montreal, works around there with a lot of famous Canadian musicians. He's also an educator, teaches guitar and jazz history at Concordia University, and he has degrees in jazz performance from McGill University and also University of Montreal. And I have a long list of guitar recordings because there's always lots of guitar trios and also piano trios. This one stood out to me because what Kirmayer has done is he's got a recording of all original compositions that are interesting, and he's sort of fixed his guitar in the context of a larger ensemble with great arrangements, and seeing himself as just a part of a larger arranged group. And that's what I thought was the big draw and why I liked this one a lot. So this is Sam Kirmayer's In This Moment. It's on the Cellar Live label. So Kirmayer on electric guitar here. Al McLean, tenor saxophone. Another thing that I liked in the arrangement, we got trombone, and recently I want to hear a lot of trombone. Going to hear some more later.
We're going to hear some more later,
And you've got on trombone, Muhammad Abdul Al-Kabir, Sean Fifey on piano, Alec Walkington on bass, Andre White on drums, all tunes, original compositions by Kirmayer. And there's some pretty neat ones here. We start with a tune called The Turnout. This is a tune like Kirmayer's originals in general that has a lot of nice harmonic movement, and all these tunes have good horn arrangements. Fifey plays the intro line on piano, hammers out a repeated chord that builds in inversions as it goes up. Kirmayer comes in with a section of the melody backed by the harmonized horns. The trombone gets the lead for a section of the melody, which is cool, trades off with the guitar, and there's a break into Kirmayer's solo. He has a really warm guitar sound, but also a clean attack. I like that kind of combination in his guitar sound. McLean gets a tenor solo here. He sounds really good on this album. He has a brusque sound, and this solo features some cool ascending riffs. Fife is next with a nice piano solo featuring some runs, clean attacks, and the drums get some solo time going around before the guitar and chord turnarounds at the end.
Yeah, very lively track after the after all those bass. That's really slow bass. This really just woke me up. It was like coffee after a night's sleep or something.
Yeah, this is a pretty energetic program of music. Track 2, Cross Purpose. This one starts with kind of an even Latin beat and a bass line doubled in the piano, left-handed bass. The sax gets the modal melody with horns coming in for backing. The trombone doubles the sax and then harmonizes on the repeat. So nice attention to the arrangement. The middle section of the melody changes up the beat. It's got that kind of change up that you hear in tunes like Night in Tunisia. So it just stands out as a separate feel. There's a different final section to the melody as well. Sax solos first. It's an intense one, getting that kind of Pharoah Sanders kind of intensity in some of the phrases. Kirmayer is next on guitar. His solo has some cool stop time stop and start line figures. It's something I noticed in his playing. He'll get a line that starts up, stops, and then kind of goes again. And so it gives you a kind of interesting sort of, I don't know, how can I say, teasing to melodic development that he gets in his solos. And I like that a lot. After a repeat of the last melody section together, Al-Kabir gets a trombone solo. He pushes the harmonics in extensions in the chords here and some nice tricky slide work getting in the upper register and ends up with some bluesy figures. Fife has a piano solo, starts with some bluesy, more repeated notes, and then emphasizes the Latin rhythm. With some nice accented chords. Nicely harmonized horns come in to push his solo along, and they repeat the intro and the main melody sections again and vamp out with some final improvisations from Kirmayer to close out. Nice funky tune. It's a good one. Track 3, Sleight of Hand. This one starts with some descending figures, unison in the guitar and horns that get the swinging melody going. Nice drum hits on the syncopated accents in the melody. It gets harmonized in the middle section. Al-Kabir is up first on trombone. He has kind of a voice-like quality in his trombone sound with good sense of swing. McLean has another tenor solo here. It's a little smoother, but still some bite in his articulation and tone. And then Kirmayer has a nice swinging solo here, lines that change direction skillfully with a few bluesy tinges in his ideas. And next there's an arranged section with sax and guitar lines working against the trombone in the arrangement to come back to the melody. So that's what really drew me into this album, the well thought out use of horn arrangements and, as backing and building the melodies along.
Yeah, I want to mention on this track too, there's a great transition into the solo section from the theme. It almost like it just melts into the trombone solo, and then they come back the same way. They're two fantastic transitions, and I think they were figured out ahead of time.
Part back in rather than just going from one solo to the next, right?
Right.
That's nice. Track 4, Blues for Proskorov. Piano, drums, bass start with some rubato rolling left hand and moving chords. Then there's like a 8-bar intro swinging into this kind of minor swinging 12-bar blues, but it's in six beats to a measure. So it's a familiar pattern with a little unusual time signature. Kirmayer plays the melody that has arranged horn line backing, and he solos first. He's relaxed and fluid, works a lot on the lower strings here. Sounds good. Al-Kabir gets a trombone solo next, leaving lots of space between his phrases. And then McLean's up on tenor. He channels lots of angst with edgy tone and gets out into the outer harmonic extensions here. Cool solo. Fifey's piano solo has contrasting, clearly articulated lines and then some hammered out bluesy chords. And he continues on with trills and bluesy runs as the horns and guitar come back in behind him. Then they take it back to the melody and jam out to a chilled ending. So I like that the horn arrangements come back into back the solos. Sort of cheer on the soloists going on. It's always a nice thing to do. Track 5, Afterthought. This one's fast swinging out of the gate. The trombone takes the melody, harmonized on the second part of it with guitar and sax. It's a nice contrasting B section to the melody in this one. Alcabir solos first, and the tempo gives him an arm workout on the slide at this tempo. But he swings it along nicely. Kirmayer is next, showing off some nice chops and clear articulation on fast triplet figures. The horns come in for backing again here too. And McLean has a solo with slinky lines that offset his sometimes gruff tone. The horns come in with guitar to build to the piano solo. And Fifey sounds really caffeinated on this one, like he had a couple of espresso shots, rapid repeating rising figures in his solo.
He also sounds pretty classical here. This really just sound like classical figuration to me, arpeggios, scales, that sort of thing.
So it's a fun, upbeat number. Track 6, the new same old. Piano intro, some nice drum brush work. Kirmayer takes a ballad melody here. There's a nice backing horn lines with muted trombone and little tasty piano fill sections in the melody. Fifey has a piano solo first. Shows off a nice delicate sense of touch on this one, building into more percussive chiming notes. Kirmayer solo here is really chilled and flows nicely. Lots of different rhythmic patterns mixed in his melodies. It slows to a stop and resets the tempo with the horns joining back in for the melody again. Track 7, the title one, In This Moment. The guitar melody line is nicely harmonized by the horns in this tune that weave off into counter lines in spots. There's a little solo sax spot in the melody portion itself. Listen to the cool rhythm change-ups from swing to Latin beats with lots of cool little breaks in the melody. McLean is up first to solo on tenor, lots of edgy tone and cries. The rhythm changes up that creates a nice section for climax between the Latin and swing beats. Kirmayer is next with some cool tumbling little figures and some standout articulated quarter notes and great melodic figures and a trill over the Latin section. And then Fifey is next with a hard swinging solo. Nice left-hand driving chords, and they go through the well-arranged melody once again. And then we've got track 8, Lost in the City. This one's got guitar and horn alternating lines in the intro. It's a slinky minor blues with a few kind of unexpected harmonic steps or progressions in it. Kirmayer plays it with the horns backing and taking over for a bit. It seems to be like AABA form, but the A is 10 measures, B is 8 measures, and then the final A is like 12 measures that include the break. So kind of a unique phrase length here. Kirmayer takes the first solo. It's smooth and bluesy. Horns coming in on the B section. McLean is next. A real tough tenor solo here. And some rhythm section stop time behind him. Nice to change up the backing behind the solos. Fifey starts out his piano solo next with a repeated note before launching into more melodic and bluesy ideas. And on the piano solo, the horns come in on the B section as they did on the guitar. The drums get a little feature section between unison guitar and horn lines. And one more run through the melody, with a nice ending that slows down and the guitar takes over the last repeated figure up an octave. So, unusual construction a bit, but kind of a really cool bluesy tune. Next, Quixote. It's a piano intro into it's like a breezy 6/8 melody, harmonized on guitar and horns, with the horn lines weaving off for little accented backing figures and spots. There's a little sax tag that seems like it might be the start of a solo, but then things quiet down for a bass solo that's deep sounding and melodic. Fife has a lovely piano solo here that builds into chiming high register figures, and Kirmayer has a pretty melodic solo too that connects back to the end of the melody with nice horn line backing for a finish. And then we finish up with Soliloquy. This is a cool alternating chord intro to this piece, a little connecting bass and piano left-hand riff between these chord figures. The horns and Kirmayer join in backing and then take the slowly stated melody. McLean solos on tenor over what develops into a real steady walking bass line. Uses a lot of ascending runs and some bluesy Coltrane-like ideas, ending in a low grunting tone. And then Alcabir gets a trombone solo. Next, it gets into some interesting phrasing that the rhythm section responds to, sort of outside of the regular rhythm pattern going on. Kirmayer is next, starting with some bluesy themes, then reaching some interesting harmonic ideas, fluid runs, cool interval figures, and he really gets to stretch out more than the other tunes here for a fine solo.
This track, I just want to say, this track fades out.
Yeah.
That's the end of the album, and it fades out.
Yeah,
what was that about? I kind of wished, when that happens, it's the last track of the album, and it fades out. I feel like everybody's still soloing now.
Yeah.
You know, like days later, they're still playing, and I'm not hearing it. It makes me all anxious about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing something good.
My first hearing of Kirmayer, but I like his guitar playing, really nice tone, fluid chops, nice ideas, clear articulation, and all of his original compositions here are interesting. And what really stuck out is the horn arrangements and the character of the other soloists. So I thought it's an interesting recording, fresh sounding music, and really good recording quality. Nice sound quality on this one.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me that the guitar sound. I was thinking, Pat Martino, you know.
Yeah.
Pat's gone now, but we have this now, Sam Kirmayer, and probably some others out there. He kind of has. I think the approach is similar. It's not the same, definitely.
He's got one foot firmly in the tradition. And then 1 foot out there. Especially, I think he's a good composer. So I think he'll find and create, his own material that, challenges him to make really nice improvised ideas. And if he can arrange this way too, getting other musicians in, it's really complete recording. Very satisfying. Lots of stuff to listen to.
Yeah, is this this is the first time you've heard him? Is this his first album? No,
he's got some other recordings. Yeah, I mean, this might be third. No,
okay.
Yeah, this might be 3 or 4. I'm not sure. Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, definitely give this a listen. All guitar players and anyone who likes to hear really good original compositions and nice horn lines too.
Yeah.
All right, and as I alluded to, but saved to the end. Earlier in the episode, last week we had a debut recording by a Hungarian pianist, Peter Gerfus. And I just picked that one from my long piano list because I thought it was an, recording that just had a really good feel, nice mixture things, and great piano playing too. And so I let Peter know that we talked about it, and he was really happy that someone noticed because he had been sitting on releasing that album for a while. He recorded it actually in 2019, but just got it out on streaming, and he hopes to have it out on disc, and he'll let us know when he does that. But he was kind enough to also share the podcast on his Facebook page, and that's one of the things I liked about doing this podcast. I'm actually rather find, a new artist or some artist that I haven't heard of and maybe, most people haven't, who's making great music, rather than just pick up the releases that all the critics and magazines recognize, and that's, for me, the kind of joy of preparing for this is digging through all the releases and finding little gems every week.
Right, and not only that, you're really doing the music, a favor too, because a lot of those scenes, like the New York scene, is kind of set and it's a certain style. It's hard to like break into it if you want to do something different, because they're all kind of, this is the way.
Yeah, it's New York.
You play here. It's New York. You play like this here,
Yeah.
In some ways, I like that, but I mean, you got there's other music out there too.
Yeah, but as we've seen, there's great jazz scenes all around the world, and you can always find some new interesting recordings on unexpected labels and from interesting places. So this week we'll end up with another debut recording, and this one is just really cool because it's trombone. And
it's really interesting too. Yeah.
This guy's got some super chops. Great musicianship on this record, and this is by Matt Hall. It's a little interesting story to it too. The title, "I Hope to My Never," on Summit Records. So Matt Hall is originally from Tennessee, and he was in the United States Marine Corps Jazz Orchestra when he was in the Marines. Then, he's a SUNY graduate too. So
wow.
I was a SUNY student, but he was in Purchase Conservatory in New York, studying with John Faddis, and then I think he's out on the West Coast now. I'm not exactly sure, but this is his debut album, and apparently this says from the album release notes, this debut album pays tribute to Matt's great aunt Joan and her exasperation over Matt's constant practicing during his childhood, always exclaiming, "I hope to my never." So
it's a familiar story that all of us who played an instrument can relate to.
I know I drove my family and neighbors nuts playing trumpet exercises all those years.
Here in Japan, like brass players will go down to the river, the Kamo River, and practice there.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, they have kind of electronic mute systems and things you can use to practice anywhere. But you can definitely make people around you go nuts. And I can tell you that Matt Hall has practiced a lot, as you'll see if you listen to this album. So here he is on trombone, also composed, arranged, and produced everything on this album. He's got compatriot from his student days here, Charlie Arbelez, alto sax, also composed a tune here. Luis Valenzuela on guitar, Jason Chatil on piano, Mackenzie Layton upright bass, and Kevin Kenner on drums. So let's get into this program. We start out with a good title, Biscuits and Gravy.
Yeah, good title.
This one is kind of a shuffling stop-time bluesy tune. Trombone and sax work the melody line together, sometimes harmonizing tightly, working through the triplets. Hall is out of the gate with a solo over the stop time with some slick slide and lip work in the upper register. He's got a great big tone with edge on it when he wants it. He swings hard and with humor in his solo. I like it.
Yeah, you said with humor. The trombone just reminds me of Frank Zappa in the Real Frank Zappa book was talking about humor in music, and he was saying like the trombone is an instrument that is just really ready for comedy. It's just ready-made for comedy, and we do hear a bit of it on this album, like you said. I'll mention another one later when it comes up.
I also feel though a trombone can, like on a ballad, trombone can capture this kind of lonely sadness sound like no other instrument can too. Like that's why I've always loved the kind of different aspects of the personality of trombone. Anyway, we'll hear more of that later. Next up in this tune, Arbelez gets an alto solo. Starts with some repeated rapid figures, and then he gets swinging along with some nice boppy lines, also an edgy tone. He gets some real speedy double time lines that the drums respond to there. Next, we get a piano solo from Chatil, swinging along, getting some speedy runs and stretching the harmony a little bit to interesting places before a bluesy ending. After they repeat the melody, they vamp out for a little more improv with sax and some tricky slide fun from Hall. Track 2, the title track, I Hope to My Never. This one has got a syncopated piano intro, nice drum brush fills creating expectation for this kind of medium tempo tune. Hall introduces the melody. Here, he's got a different aspect. Nice, huge, fluffy sound he can get, but clear articulation and some nice wide vibrato on, phrase ends. I liked that.
A lot of loneliness and sadness in the trombone tone in this track.
I like that. Leighton gets a bass solo spot with some rapid lines, harmonized notes, great articulation. Hall comes back for a solo himself. He's got really great high register chops, mixing in sweet sounding lines with tricky figures for an uplifting solo. It really, just creates a positive kind of vibe with this solo. We get piano solo from Chatil. Nice trickling high register ideas and good left-hand punctuation. Hall brings the melody back and ends with a nicely held long note to finish it up.
Sadness.
3. Nice title. I wonder what it's about. The Thing About Sloan Hill.
Well, what is the thing about Sloan Hill?
We don't know.
I guess we have to kind of translate this into words somehow.
Yeah. Tricky, swinging melody that keeps you guessing with drum fills and varied rhythms in the unison on the sax and trombone. Valenzuela's on guitar for a solo with this one. A lot of tricky but fluid rhythmic figures. And then Hall rips into his solo. Rips into it. Shows a lot of agility on this one, ending up with a bluesy idea. Another very cool bass solo from Leighton, who digs into it, and they repeat the cool melody to take it out. 4, we're going to get a jazz standard, DeLange and Van Heusen's Deep in a Dream. Drum tom rolls and piano chords. This is that kind of dun 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 dun. So it goes like major, and then you raise the fifth to get that augmented, and then up again to the like relative minor. You still stay on the root chord in the bass though, but that builds that kind of expectation. It sets it up for Hall to come in and really make that trombone sing with the longing and lonely tone you can only get on that instrument.
Not only that, there's a kind of goofiness to the way he plays this this melody. There's something kind of droopy to it that kind of made that I thought sounded kind of funny.
I like it.
It sounded self-deprecating in his dreaminess. You know what I mean?
There's great phrasing, lots of nice little touches to the articulation. He gets down into the lower register on the bridge for some great contrast to that soaring phrase, which he'll contrast himself later in the tune. Chatil gets a tasty piano solo, very pretty upper register melodic figures with a nice touch, and Hall comes back for a solo. The drums brush up the swing a little bit more excitement behind in the solo. He weaves nice melodic lines, ends up with some great tumbling slide figures, and so they just kind of go out. You can just, I get a visual when I see it of how the slide moving. He weaves those kind of things into a fluid guitar solo from Valenzuela. Ends up with some nice double stops and sliding notes. Very tasty there. Hall comes back in on the bridge. This time he's in the upper register, and then he weaves that back into the verse. He gets a long cadenza, working through some cool triplet figures, low notes with harmonics, down in the extended range, some cycles of harmonies, and then he ends the tune on a crazy high F sharp, way up high.
He gets this solo at the end with no accompaniment at all, and he gets this really almost emotionally pathetic sort of quality out of it. There's a lot of humor in his playing in this piece. There's a kind of like humorous schmaltziness to it at times too. The word schmaltz is coming back again, but in this case it's played for maybe comedy, can I say, but at least humor, let's just say.
All right. All good fun.
It's quite a
that last
quite
note.
A track.
Wow. Here, next one, Spearhead. This is kind of a cool tune. It's got this mysterious alternating bass line figures, little scratchy guitar chords behind it. Then the trombone and sax share the melody. It's got kind of a spy theme bit kind of feel to it with some unexpected turns.
Yeah. It's got also the trombone slides have a bit of humor in them too. Like he does a few of those kind of slides.
Yeah. Hall comes right out of the break from the melody with this solo. It's like, I called it a dizzying, rising shake. You know, on a brass instrument, you can get like a lip shake. And of course, on trombone, you have the slide too, but it's just, it's like
I think he has a mute. You know. He has a mute too in this, doesn't he? Like
I don't think so.
No? Okay. It's the sound.
Could have missed it. But,
sounded like a mute to me.
I think he just...
you're the brass player. I'm going to leave it to you.
Yeah, I didn't note it anyway. Anyway, he really navigates the chord changes here with nice melodic ideas, some super articulation on triplets and other figures. Then there's a nice change up from swing to Latin beat and back inside of that, which is cool. Arbalest has intense alto solos, really some burning lines, high shrieking phrases, high energy sax playing, and also good piano solo from Chatil here, digging in with some rhythmic and hard swinging lines. And they take the fun melody back out for another ride to finish it up. Track 6, this is original by the sax player, Arbalest, called No Going Back. You got a drum intro, add bass guitar and piano, and it forms into kind of a minor samba that takes shape. Arbalest has written a very cool melody that's very tricky, but he and Hall really nail it working together perfectly. Valenzuela is up for a solo first, rapid fire lines. Arbalest is next. He really hits the changes with some burning licks. Well, he wrote the changes to it, so it sounds like he did it to have fun with, and he does that really well. Hall is ready for this challenge too. Some speedy rhythmic slide work. Good piano solo as well. And then the sax and bone are back with a new super tight melody line. It's like a second melody that comes in. Then they split off to trade phrases for a bit near the end. And then Kenner gets a drum solo. Sax and trombone are back for the original melody. Listen for the sudden false ending and the slow final phrase to end it all up. 7, the Tiger's Ritual. So rolling rubato piano chords and guitar as an intro. The cymbals introduce a Latin beat, and Hall introduces the soaring melody. It changes up between swing and Latin for that nice contrast. Hall is up for a solo first, building bright melodic phrases. He hits the melody on the Latin beat and then gets some modal ideas and cool, tricky slide work in his solo.
This was pretty intriguing, this whole track. Just the changing rhythm and then the modes. Yeah. Oh, man.
Very cool. Plays on and on. His chops never get tired. Get some soaring melodies, seductive trills ending down low. And Valenzuela's guitar solo with some dreamy double stops and cool rhythmic figures over the Latin part to end up. Chatil gets a interesting solo as well. Rapid runs and then Latin rhythms before easing back into another round of the melody from Hall with some more soaring lines and rhythms as it fades out.
That drove me crazy because I thought the solos in this were really great, and I was like, oh no, I want to keep going, keep going. You know. Yeah, that fade kind of drove me crazy, I gotta say.
This composition has lots of things to feed the fire of solos with those rhythmic change-ups and, good spots to put in modal things. And, really cool. All right, now we're going to get some real craziness here.
We sure are.
3G, which I guess in the notes said it was his apartment number or something. That was the inspiration. This one's going to drop from outer space with these ridiculous altissimo theremin-like notes.
I said theremin too. That's funny. Wow.
They're just like, come in. If you didn't know this was a trombone album, you wouldn't know, what's creating these tones. They come right in from the stratosphere, and then Hall gets down really low with some harmonics again. He works through some rapid phrases, then way, way down low. Next alternating agile higher lines with low harmonies, finishing off with a bluesy riff and some alternating high E's up to a G and back to the E. So
this was pretty riveting. This
you show
track,
off. You show off.
I know, right?
Everyone would do that if they could. Yeah, fabulous trombone playing. You haven't heard this kind of stuff since like Bill Watrous or some of those masters. So it's just a pleasure to hear someone with these chops and cool, fun ideas to do with them. And we finish up with Charlie's Harley. This one's...
good title.
Yeah, cool title. Fun tune. Fun. Man.
High speed.
Yeah.
It's high speed
this
fun.
One, not only is it fast, but it's got some great horn lines and some real tricky rhythmic things that they keep up these little rhythmic variations through the solos. So you got to be on your toes to get through this one. Starts with some descending sax and trombone lines that introduce this burning, real boppy kind of tune. Wow, it's fast. Trombone and sax trade off on the bridge and then join back in for the final section. Arbalest is up first for another burning alto solo. But as I said, they keep up this kind of syncopated rhythmic breakups during the solo, so everyone has to be on their toes as they get through their own solo parts. It's hard to even catch a breath at this tempo. But Arbalest gets some real soaring notes on the bridge. Very cool. Hall is up to the challenge too. I'd really like to see him play this. I want to see how he gets that slide going so fast. He maintains good articulation even at this speed. Gets some soaring lines in as well. Nice fast boppy piano solo too from Chatil, and he handles the rhythmic change-ups like an obstacle course. You see, like running over these syncopated hurdles and stuff. Valenzuela, nice fast chops on guitar too. Then they trade round with Cantor on the drums, who gets a little extended bit before they race through this ridiculous melody head once more. Still enough in the tank for some great new ideas on the sax and trombone bridge improv spots. So they still have ideas in the tank when they get through there. So, yeah. What can I say? This is a fabulous debut album. It's, Matt Hall is an awesome trombone player, great chops, nice compositions. These are really heavy, focused on swing.
Always a good tempo.
Yeah. But some tasty ballad playing too. Really nice arrangements and a really positive, fun listen all the way through.
And even comic at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety, and it's light, and there's a bit of humor in there too. That's always a good thing to hear.
It's nice when you have when you have chops like that. It's good to have some
but ideas like that
to
too. It's just fantastic. You know, it's a really appealing album.
Yeah, this is really good. So all trombone players, all brass players, you got to check this out.
Just all jazz people.
It's a great jazz album.
It's a great jazz album. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. So I'll be looking to see what he records next. Really fun recording.
Yeah, and it's been a really fun week of listening, I guess. Yeah. I think we pretty much were at least interested in everything we heard.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a really good variety of things. And we got some especially focused on American music, but not from America. So that was kind of interesting. You know.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah. We got German and French takes on American classic repertoire. So very
right.
Cool.
And Schmaltz. This was the first episode that featured Schmaltz, I think.
Schmaltz, heavy on the Schmaltz, yeah.
Schmaltz liquor.
Schmaltz liquor.
That's a good title. We should use that one, maybe.
I don't know. We might not convey the exact meaning we want.
See, this is a problem. It's a good title, but you don't want to talk to the musicians and say, "Hey, we talked about you on our episode,
Schmaltz Liquor." Forever associated with that title. Horrible.
Right.
All right.
Maybe someone will use it as an album title. That'll be cool.
It could be a good. I can think of a couple covers that would work for that. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Okay. Any hints for next week?
Next week, I really don't know. I have. Okay. I have maybe a Baroque. We haven't done a Baroque in a while, have we?
It's been a couple of weeks, I think, yeah. Yeah,
it's been a couple of weeks. Maybe I'll get one of those next week. And I don't know. I'm still waiting for a lot of stuff to show up. It's sort of... There's a jazz Rite of Spring that I want to talk about, but I still don't have... We could do it. I mean, but I've actually heard it. It was really good. I guess we could do it. But I was I wanted to get the CDs. I liked it a lot and listen to it that way, but I don't have it yet. They haven't even shipped it yet. Oh. So
all right,
waiting for that. But we could maybe not next week. We'll do that soon. That's the if anyone wants to check that out, it's the Jim McNeely big band. I think. Okay, it's a good recording, but I think it needs some unpack. Well, it doesn't. It's appealing, but if you know the Rite of Spring, you'll love it right away.
Right.
The Stravinsky composition.
And it's that time of year, so.
It is. Yeah, maybe we should do that soon.
We should do it.
Maybe in 2 weeks or so we'll do it. I don't know. Or maybe, I don't know. I'll think about it. Maybe next week.
Just let me know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. This episode got some American classics and some debut variety jazz and another Wranitzky recording. Thanks again, Daniel, for those CDs.
Yeah, thanks for the CDs. I love CDs.
This great new release of oboe compositions from Wranitzky. We'll be enjoying that for days to come, weeks to come, and looking forward to more Wranitzky. This has been episode 55 of Adult Music.
We'll be listening to those until the weather turns and we want to brood again.
Something brooding. Remember, you can find all the recordings available on streaming this week in the links in the episode description for Apple Music.
Which doesn't happen every week, so make sure you listen to them.
When Mike picks Hyperion recordings.
They're the only ones.
They're the only ones,
them.
Yeah. Pretty much everyone.
Sony doesn't have some stuff, but they usually have what I pick, so I don't know.
Or come on to Deezer to find the playlist of everything in one location. Also, thanks again to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our adult music logo.
Yeah, thanks, Rich.
If you meet us on the street, we'll give you one of our huge collection of business cards.
Yeah, we have 1,000 business cards. If anyone wants one,
so thanks again, Rich, for those.
I think I'm going to hand these on to my grandchildren or something.
You never know.
There's so many of them.
For that catchy new logo. And, who knows? We don't know what we're going to do next week yet, but we'll know by tomorrow. So if you go into Deezer, you can find the playlist. I'm calling it
now. I'm going to have a jazz recording, Rite of Spring. I'm going to do that.
Okay.
That's my crossover sort of thing.
All right.
That'll be one of my 3.
Springy theme.
Well, we should have done that today with the Wranitzky. I didn't think about it though, but I didn't know the Wranitzky was going to be so spring-like, when we heard it. So, anyway.
All right. Well, until next week, then please do subscribe, follow on whatever platform you're on, and we'll be back again next week for episode 56. And until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.